Kicking off the list at number 10 is Ultra Boy. This one is interesting, as you'd be totally forgiven for laughing at this character, but then you'd have to say sorry, as you just insulted an incredibly powerful dude. Ultra Boy, or as he is known in his civilian guise, Joe Na, possesses many of the same superpowers as Superboy, including superhuman speed, strength, flight, stamina, breath, vision, and invulnerability, which he gained from being swallowed by a massive space energy beast, which is essentially a giant space whale, hence the biblical Jonah name. While he was inside the energy beast's stomach, the radiation inside altered Joe Na to give him superpowers. Now the only issue with Joe Na, and it's a big one, is that he can only use one power at a time. This means that if he wants to fly through space at super speed, he must wear a spacesuit to survive in the cold vacuum, or when using his power for super strength, he is not invulnerable and can therefore get tired, feel muscular pain, or even pull a muscle. Joe Na can switch these abilities almost instantly, but needs to make the conscious choice to do so, which honestly sounds kind of exhausting to me. I don't know. Number 9. Puck. The Alpha Flight member known as Puck was at one point literally just a little person who pushed himself to turn his body into an almost perfect physical specimen, able to lift hundreds of pounds and fight as well as his fellow Alpha Flighters. But this was before his Alpha Flight days. He had tons of adventures and his pretty basic but mysterious backstory added to his likability. But that ain't the dumb part. The dumb part came later on when it was revealed that Puck was actually much older than he seemed and was not actually born as a little person. Apparently, Puck used to be 7 feet tall and was a mercenary and adventurer who was born near the start of the 20th century. As a merc, he was hired to steal the Black Blade of Baghdad, and he totally got it, but then it unleashed an ancient magical being known as Black Razor. In order to defeat the being, Puck sucked him into his own body, becoming immortal in the process, but also losing half of his height and being trapped in the form of a little person. Why couldn't he just be a little person? I don't know. Number 8. Elongated Man. When Ralph Dibny was a tiny little Ralph Dibny, he saw a contortionist at a carnival and he was instantly down to be able to be like that guy. Everyone has their own thing, okay? And for Ralph, his thing was trying to figure out how someone could twist and fold their body into all sorts of shapes like that. Obsessed with learning the secrets of the contortionists for years and years, Ralph figured out that all the contortionists he observed drank the same drink. Now it's not some crazy formula, it's not some kind of tea, but it was actually a popular soft drink known as Gingold. Now Ralph knew for the most part that it was just a coincidence that they all drank the same drink, but that doesn't mean he wasn't gonna bet everything on it. Ralph literally taught himself chemistry, which should be the superpower itself, and he used his newly found chemistry skills to create a super concentrated extract from the fruit that was the basis and heart for Gingold, the Gingo fruit. And what do you know? The super concentrated extract allowed him to make any part of his body stretch to ridiculous degrees. What's that I hear you say? Why yes, this does make no sense. Number 7. Wally West. Between roughly 1950 and 1970, 90% of superhero origin stories involved either chemicals or radiation. That's just how it worked. The Flash, we are all most familiar with, Barry Allen, became the fastest man alive when he was working at his forensics laboratory one night and a freak bolt of lightning struck his rack of chemicals and also Barry himself. In a stroke of luck, instead of completely frying the guy, the electricity from the lightning mixed with the unique and specific collection of chemicals and it gave Barry Allen super speed and access to the Speed Force. Now while that origin may give you some pause, it's a classic origin story and most of us has just come to accept it. Now, 3 years after the Flash debuted, Barry Allen was visited by Wally West, the nephew of Barry's girlfriend, Iris. Wally was a big Flash fan, so Barry took him on a tour of his lab, the very lab where he was struck by lightning. Well, what do you know, a rogue bolt of lightning struck the very same rack of chemicals, all of which were still stored alongside each other, and then the lightning struck Wally West. The electricity mixed with this apparent unique collection of chemicals, unique enough to have it happen twice, and can you guess what happened? Yeah. Wally West gained super speed and access to the Speed Force. It's not like it doesn't make sense for an event to produce the same outcome, but I guess lightning really do be striking twice, huh? Or we got lazy with the writing. you pick.
Number 6. Barbara Gordon forgets her training. This has always been a weird superhero defeat that has baffled me personally. So Barbara Gordon is Batgirl, right? And yet in The Killing Joke, which admittedly is a story that initially was intended to exist purely outside of canon and still sort of does, Barbara is accosted by the Joker pretty easily. Now granted, this was while Barbara was in her civilian form and was visiting her father, Jim Gordon, at his home. So she goes to answer the door and is surprised to see the Joker there, who shoots her in the stomach. I understand being surprised, and I understand not wanting to reveal your identity as Batgirl, but come on. This is Babs! I feel like she could have handily disarmed the Joker here with everything else I know about her and how skilled she is. Or at least she should have been able to, in my headcanon. Maybe I'm being unreasonable to assume this, but I really don't think so. Also, I feel like even if you're like, oh, I gotta protect my secret identity by doing nothing, you could still do something. I mean, you are Jim Gordon's daughter, so I feel like people would assume you have some kind of combat training. Number 5. Jean's planetary-sized stroke. Sometimes I think about some of the things happening in the Krakoa era, and when I remember all the history of these characters, it blows my mind. Like when, for example, during Grant Morrison's new X-Men run in issue 150, Magneto was revealed to be Zorn, although thankfully we'd actually get an entirely different Zorn later on, and Magneto here used an electromagnetic pulse to give Jean Grey, who at the time had the power of the Phoenix Force, a quote planetary scale stroke. End quote. What that means, I still don't really know. What is that? This all went down at a moment too when Jean was actually winning the fight, but was used as a method for Magneto to basically turn the tables on her. Jean would end up dying in this battle, even though the idea of beating the Phoenix in this way just seems, pretty ridiculous to me. This is the Phoenix we're talking about, who can control, manipulate, and even create matter at an atomic level, who also prior to this was stabbed through by Wolverine, which she not only survived, but this actually unleashed her power, her latent Phoenix abilities. And yet somehow, after all that, she ends up killed by a stroke. Well, I guess it's not any stroke, it is a planetary scale one, but still. Also, what does that even mean? It's so comics. And now it's really weird to think that Jean and Magneto were friendly up until his death. That's pretty crazy. Number 4. Batwoman goes out with a whimper. For this point, we are not talking about Kate Kane, Batman's cousin and the current Batwoman over at DC Comics. We're talking instead about the first Batwoman, Kathy Kane. Although she does sound like she would be the same person based on, both of her names. This version of the character, however, was actually not related to Batman and was even a bit of a love interest for him, as well as a female crime-fighting partner. However, apparently neither her skills nor her connection and long-standing relationship with the Caped Crusader would protect her from getting unceremoniously fridged. Long before the term was ever coined, I believe. In issue number 485, more than 250 issues after her first appearance, she was killed, get this, off-panel, when Batman was knocked out. The League of Assassins had come for Kathy and Batman was unable to stop them. While he was knocked unconscious, she was killed, and of course we don't get to see any of that because he was knocked out and we're following his narrative, not hers. So with her death really only served as well to give Batman motivation to go after the League of Assassins, so there's also that point. Very unfortunate. Number 3. Green Lantern sees yellow. Yep, what a ridiculous way to defeat Green Lantern, but this was the approach that was taken in Frank Miller's Batverse. In All-Star Batman and Robin, The Boy Wonder issue number 9, Batman is confronted by Green Lantern, Hal Jordan. In this reality, Batman is not yet part of the Justice League, and Green Lantern doesn't like the way that Batman is operating. He's one of the people who is kind of more against offering Batman a place on the team, but he did think he could be redeemed. After all, Batman is still a hero, but it's his methods that Hal and many of the other team members take issue with, which is why Hal came to talk to him about that. However, this talk did not go so well. Green Lantern meets Batman and Robin in one of Batman's safe houses, which has all been completely painted yellow, right down to Batman and Robin's face and suits. Robin even eats yellow ice cream while Batman drinks yellow lemonade. It's like overkill. Obviously this is done to mock Hal's weakness to the color and probably to actually weaken him, to be honest. Not only does Batman claim the moral high ground in their debate, but Robin actually manages to steal Green Lantern's ring in this issue, and then he, not Batman, is the one who proceeds to defeat him in a fistfight, even almost killing him, with Batman being forced to take aggressive action to save Hal's life. Also, could you imagine being in the ambulance that comes to this emergency call. You like come into this safe house. Everything's yellow everywhere. Like, that would be so weird. Oh boy. Number 2, Batman kicks the Hulk and lives. In DC Special Series issue number 27 from 1981, we get a strange mashup of Batman and the Hulk. Like many superhero team-ups, especially involving crossovers between publishers, these two end up initially forced to fight one another, with the Hulk being led to believe that Batman is his enemy, having been manipulated by the Joker. And I think we all know how we'd imagine this fight would go. I mean, Hulk versus Batman, you would think the Hulk's definitely gonna win that fight. Batman is extremely skilled, but he is just a man. During their first fight, Batman desperately attempts to defeat the Hulk by using sleeping gas. However, Hulk understands that the gas is dangerous and decides to hold his breath. Batman surmises that he needs to find a way to make the Hulk breathe, because the Hulk could probably hold his breath forever, since his lungs are so big. First of all, Batman, I don't think that's the way lungs work. Just because the Hulk has a larger lung capacity doesn't mean he could hold his breath for longer, I don't think. His body is simply larger, which is why his lungs are bigger, and lung size doesn't necessarily correlate to being skilled at holding one's breath, at least not as far as I know. In fact, the Hulk being large would likely just mean that his body requires more oxygen, hence his larger lungs. Secondly, Batman kicks Hulk in the stomach to force him to breathe, which somehow works. Which is insane, considering that Batman is just a normal man with amazing skills. In other words, how did he succeed and also not shatter his leg in his attempt to do so? I mean, a kick from Batman to Hulk has to feel like nothing. And also, if Batman kicked the Hulk with enough force to do that, you would think he would mess himself up really bad. Number 1, Dollar Bill's cape. A lot of people say that capes are dumb. It's not just Edna Mode saying that. And if you were able to ask the Dollar Bill, I'm sure he'd actually agree with them. But you can't, because 1, he's a fictional character, and 2, he's dead. Dollar Bill is a minor character from Watchmen. He was a member of the Minutemen in the 1940s. While attempting to stop an armed bank robbery, his cape was caught in a revolving door and he was shot and killed. So, no capes!
In at 10, Legion of Super Pets. Okay, look, I know they had an animated movie and stuff, but like, come on. The Legion of Super Pets was a remarkable team comprised of extraordinary animal companions, okay? Among its members were Crypto the Super Dog, Streaky the Super Cat, and the inclusion of Wizzy. In pursuit of their ambitious plan to relocate Earth to their solar system, the otherworldly beings known as the Brain Globes of Rombat devised a strategy that hinged on defeating Superboy. Failing to gain control over him, they resorted to summoning Cosmic Boy, Lightning Lad, and Saturn Girl from the future, who were members of the Legion of Superheroes. Under the mental command of the Brain Globes, this trio was compelled to capture Superboy, and then once he was subdued, the Brain Globes relinquished their hold over the Legionnaires. Recognizing that their power did not extend to animals though, the Legionnaires gathered Crypto, Streaky, Beepo, which was like from Superman's present, and Comet the Super Horse to confront their extraterrestrial adversaries. With the combined efforts of the pets, they triumphed over those and subsequently honored as the Legion of Super Pets, which was an animal division of the Legion of Superheroes. And then each pet was returned to their respective time periods, but like, come on, dude, what the hell? Who thought of this storyline? In at 9, X-Babies. The original X-Babies were a youthful incarnation of the X-Men, as you could probably guess, consisting of Nightcrawler, Storm, Wolverine, Rogue, Colossus, Shadowcat, Magneto, Longshot, and Psylocke. Mojo, the mastermind behind their de-aging, who is not a Powerpuff Girls villain, as I've been informed, had intended to dispose of them, but they were rescued by the New Mutants. During the X-Men's absence, in the Fall of Mutants event, Mojo sought to create replacement teams using Neoplasm, experimenting with various iterations such as gender-swapped and animal versions, but no more Legion of Super X animals here. But eventually, the X-Babies came into existence. However, Mojo soon deemed them a failed experiment and planned to eliminate them. Seizing that opportunity though, the X-Babies escaped, taking the pilot Ricochet Rita with them. Seeking refuge, the group found sanctuary within Mojo's crossover house, and in a fear of confrontation, they escaped to Earth 616. Unfortunately though, Rita was captured during their fight and covertly transformed into the agent set on a mission to apprehend the X-Babies. But yes, in the Mojo verse, there is a team of X-Men babies. Most of these are like a good dumb, It's like, it's dumb, but it's also good, but some the other ones are just like, why? And at 8, the Inferior 5. The Inferior 5 is basically DC making fun of the Fantastic Four, and you can trace their lineage back to the esteemed Freedom Brigade, a team of masked adventurers hailing from an alternate Earth, which is Earth 12, existing prior to the Crisis on Infinite Earths event. Following the retirement of the brigade, their children were reluctantly coerced into carrying on their legacy and utilizing their inherited abilities and powers. However, their commitment to the superhero vocation was lackluster at best. For almost 2 decades, Megalopolis enjoyed a period of peace, thanks to the Freedom Brigade's successful eradication of crime. But this tranquility was shattered when a new villain emerged, known as Dr. Gruesome. Mayor Boswell, faced with this newfound threat, called upon the retired members for assistance, but it was during this time that Patriot and Lady Liberty saw an opportunity to rally their former comrades and encourage their children to do their work for them. Taking up residence in the former headquarters of the Freedom Brigade, the 5 fledgling heroes embarked on a challenging journey to defeat Dr. Gruesome, albeit relying heavily on circumstance. Despite their initial victory, they soon discovered that their individual skills clashed and rendered them a remarkably ineffective team. So yeah, there you go. That's DC making fun of the Fantastic Four, just with an extra person. That's why it failed, because they had that one more person. In its 7, Great Lakes Avengers. Inspired by his newfound power to defy death, Craig Hollis assumed the mantle of Mr. Immortal and embarked on a crusade against crime. Recognizing the advantages of having a team by his side, he placed an advertisement seeking individuals of action. Yes, this dude made an ad for a superhero team. Gathering at a local YMCA, I'm not even joking, Mr. Immortal was joined by Big Bertha, Dr. Sore, Doorman, Flatman, and Leather Boy, which just sounds like my Saturday nights. Together, they established themselves as the Great Lakes Avengers, serving as a sister team to the West Coast Avengers and the Avengers of the East Coast. Taking on various criminal menaces, the Great Lakes Avengers swiftly garnered the attention of Hawkeye and Mockingbird, who were intrigued. The duo journeyed to Wisconsin to investigate these imposter Avengers. However, upon discovering that the team was comprised of an unconventional set of heroes, Hawkeye and Mockingbird took it upon themselves to provide guidance and training. These guys were trained by Hawkeye, the guy with a bow and nothing else. In the early days, the team relied heavily on the money that Ashley Crawford, Big Bertha, was making from modeling to finance their HQ, but yeah, they also made use of her private jet for transportation. God, this whole thing has to be a joke, right? Doorman, Leather Boy.
Number 6, Black Condor. A young Richard Grey, who would go on to become the flying superhero Black Condor, was the only survivor of an attack by Mongolian bandits on him and his archaeologist family. Now, stuck alone and in the wild, the little Richard was taken in by a family of condors. In the same way Mowgli was taken in by wolves and Tarzan was taken in by gorillas. Unfortunately, Richard wasn't a bird. He didn't have the musculature or the feathers or anything really that allows him to take flight like his new family could. But what are millions of years of evolution compared to the human brain and a little bit of practice? Richard spent most of his life studying the birds until he actually managed to teach himself how to just fly. Oh, there was also the exposure to a radioactive meteor, but he truly believed he had taught himself to fly. Once he was discovered by a missionary, Grey headed back home to the United States, where he became the flying adventurer known as the Black Condor. He went back specifically though to save a certain US senator, but when it was too late and he just happened to look exactly like the senator, he decided to abandon the name of Richard Grey and instead took the politician's identity. I think Richard Grey actually just might be insane. Yeah. Number 5, the Flaming Carrot. You would be forgiven for not knowing of the superhero known as the Flaming Carrot. For one, the Flaming Carrot has been published by different publishers from Aardvark Vanaheim, Renegade Press, and Dark Horse until 2005 when he began being published by Image Comics. The other reason is because, look at him! He's utterly ridiculous! His ridiculous look is matched by his equally ridiculous origin though. Essentially, the Flaming Carrot became a superhero after being bet to read thousands of comic books, specifically 5,000 comic books. Somehow, reading 5,000 comic books caused this unknown man to have brain damage, and then he appeared with a giant carrot for a mask, which had apparently an eternal flame on top of it, and he became a crime fighter. That's it. His gear and equipment is pretty equally nuts too. He has a utility belt which contains a yo-yo, a lucky rabbit's foot, laughing gas, magnifying glass, band-aids with little stars and rockets on them, silly putty, a skeleton key, stink bombs, a decoder badge, Pez candy, a magnet, a bubble pipe, super glue, a wishbone, trading cards, invisible ink, sneeze powder, and fizzies. That's his gear, alongside a nuclear-powered pogo stick and flippers that he wears at all times, just in case he has to swim. 'Cause you never know. Number 4. Whizzer. Bob Frank and his father Emil were traveling through Africa when they both unfortunately came down with an extremely deadly illness. Needing a transfusion in order to save their lives, Emil made it a mission to find someone who would be willing to help them and to save Bob's life. Apparently, there was absolutely no one who could help them out. But then, to make matters so much more worse, Bob also got bitten by a very deadly cobra. Bob was not having a good go of things here. When that happened, a mongoose then just showed up and it introduced that snake to the afterlife. Of course, this must have been a sign, and Emil had the idea to use the mongoose for the transfusion instead of a human to save his son's life. Don't worry about how a mongoose and a human are completely different. He was going to save his son's life, goddammit, okay? He was gonna do it. Now, not only did the mongoose DNA running through his veins actually save his life, but naturally this had the added benefit of allowing Bob to now run at super speed. Apparently this was also just common information, as Emil explained it as nonchalantly as pouring a cup of tea. Later on, it would be revealed that Frank had natural powers that were just jump-started by the addition of the mongoose DNA, but of course, that's only after the writers realized how that makes no sense. Number 3. Falling on Rogue. Nothing stands up to falling on a woman who leeches life away, unable to pick herself up. Well, falling isn't the right word. It was more like Mr. Sinister was held down. Following the events of M-Day, a mutant named Hope Summers is born, bringing hope to the mutant species. Well, Mr. Sinister, he reassembled the Marauders and planned to control the future of mutant kind by stealing Hope. Sinister knew this and wanted to use Hope to control the mutant population because the mutants can't just have something without a villain trying to mess it all up. Sinister regrouped his Marauders alongside Mystique, who knew that Hope was necessary to save her daughter, Rogue, from her out-of-control powers. Well, Sinister failed to capture Hope, and like an idiot, he informs Mystique that he is unable to help her save Rogue. Safe to say that Mystique doesn't appreciate that very much. She grabs and shoves Sinister's face onto the unconscious Rogue, and unable to get up, his life is sucked away. Now I'll admit, it's a little bit awesome, but in the massive gallery of villains losing their life, it's arguably one of the lamest ones. Imagine Sinister having to tell people about this one when he eventually returns. Embarrassing.
Number 2, turned into a sundae. I don't actually know if Ice Cream died here, but it certainly seems to be implied that he did. At least to me it does. This is the canon that lives in my mind. Ice Cream was a character who could turn into ice cream, hence his name. Ice Cream, Ice Cream, get it? He infiltrated the X-Mansion in the first and only issue of Obnoxio the Clown. Speaking of weird comics, that's another one. He wanted revenge on the X-Men because they had cooler mutant powers than he did. Although how he really planned to get said revenge and beat them when his powers only allowed him to turn into ice cream, I'm not really sure. He attempted to turn the danger room on the students, but this plan ended up failing, with Professor X lowering the temperature of the control room to below freezing, which caused Ice Cream to freeze solid. At the end of the story, Obnoxio the Clown decorates Ice Cream as a giant sundae, while Ice Cream's fate is left ultimately undetermined. We never see him again, and it's possible that he literally could have met his end by being mistaken and consumed as actual ice cream at some point later in his life, so yeah.
Number 1. Just take off the quiver. A lot of the time when a hero's light goes out, it will be in an ultimate display of self-sacrifice, throwing themselves into impossible circumstances in order to save the majority. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, that kind of thing. It's the number 1 heroic move, but it only really works when there is absolutely no other option. When looking at Hawkeye's sacrifice in Avengers Disassembled, there were a whole handful of other options, and most of them were pretty obvious, making for a heroic self-sacrifice that just ended up coming coming across as incredibly dumb and unnecessary. Basically, Wanda Maximoff has gone completely bonkers and turned on the Avengers, but none of them know that just yet. She's already caused the passing of both Vision and Scott Lang, Ant-Man, and all the Avengers have assembled in order to figure out what the heck was happening. Using her hex powers, she created a Kree warship to show up out of nowhere and go on the attack. Hawkeye runs off to go get some more arrows, and when he comes back, he goes off, taking out Kree left, right, and center until he is hit in his explosive arrow quiver by an energy weapon. With his quiver on fire and set to explode, instead of just taking it off or firing off the arrows, Hawkeye grabs a Kree with a jetpack and blasts off into the warship, blowing both it and himself clean off the battlefield. Just silly.
Number 10. Pink elephants. Now of course I have to start off with one of the most wild issues. It's titled Pink Elephants. It's issue 212 of Green Lantern Corps, but don't let the name fool you, there's no weird elephant stuff in this one per se. So we have Hal Jordan, and he's being eyed down by Aricia Rabb. See, the only thing is, Aricia is only 13 years old. Young love, classic. Way too young though, way too young. Hal Jordan is of course not 13. So she uses her power ring to make herself appear older, but it's still not okay, you know? You know, that's like 13 going on 30, but Hal Jordan knows that it's actually her and she's making herself look older. That's gross, that's super gross, and also super illegal. Ayo, Aricia's like, oh, I love you because you're the most handsomest man I've ever met and because you treated me as a real Green Lantern even though I was so young and because you couldn't keep from calling me honey. And even Hal Jordan's like, oh, okay, I didn't say, let's stop there, let's just chill. Don't say it out loud, please. Gross. Even saying it out loud here is just, yuck. Number 9, Bat Baby. Issue 147 of Batman has one of the funniest lines on a comic book title page ever. So we have Robin, just regular old Robin, and a baby sporting the mask and the cowl, and the businessman on the cover is like, look out, it's Bat Baby and Robin. Like, I love the stutter that he does too. He's like, look out, it's Bat Baby. Like, he's kind of like has to take a second to realize what he's looking at, which is kind of like us too. We're looking at the thing like, it's a Bat Baby, I guess. Yeah, debit, let's do it. And the weirdest part is, he still has the abilities of a full-grown Batman. So Batman and Robin get up close to Nails Finney and his gang, and then Batman sees Garth, the renegade scientist. Garth! Turns out Nails brought them into a trap, and now Batman has shrunk down to the size of a small child. Very small. The headlines were amazing in the news that week. Gangland turns Batman into baby, and the photo is just Batman all moody, like, it's the best. Robin at one point even has to carry Batman to the Batmobile. So what does Batman do? He embraces it. He's like, fine, I'll dress like a baby, I'll become Bat Baby, let's do it. He does well though, or he does okay rather. One of the headlines that you see next reads, Bat Baby does okay for a kid. That's it? Just okay? Like, I mean, he's okay. He just rode a balloon up in the air like 40 feet and then fought off 3 crooks, but he did okay. For a kid. He was okay for a kid. Yeah, he had to ride a balloon because his legs were so small. That's the sound I make when I'm trying to run fast. I don't think we'll ever get this comic on the big screen, but who knows? I mean, we got Scott Lang as a baby in The Last Avengers. Maybe DC will really go for it and have a Bat Baby make a brief cameo. We're hoping. And number 8, Bat Witch. This one's a classic. Released in 1969, issue 186 of The World's Finest, we find Batman in a bit of an odd situation. So, Superman and Batman at this point have traveled back in time to solve a mystery of a broken bust that resembled Batman. They're like, alright, let's go back in time, figure this out. So they go back and they rescue a lady named Sylvia Ward. Now, Sylvia was actually accused of witchcraft, and she's in trouble. So Superman helps her stay afloat, and then Batman swims beside her to shore, right? What a good team. 2 nice guys, classic. And then she thanks Batman by kissing him right on the lips. Ooh-wee. And then Superman goes to introduce himself, and then Batman interrupts and takes her to the local bar. Oh shit! So Superman decides to use this era in his favor. So he dresses up as Batman and starts like floating around and doing like all this crazy witch stuff. So much so that the town deems him a witch. So Batman is about to be burned at the stake. He's got like his hands and his head, he's stuck in the whole scenario. And then a thunderstorm rolls in and everyone's like, ah, is it raining? Can't be doing any of that. And then they leave. They don't want to see a guy dressed like a bat like get killed. They think he's a witch, but they're like, you know what? I didn't bring my umbrella, so can't do it this time. Next time. We'll get him next time. Let's head out. Everybody leaves except for, you guessed it, Ben Franklin. Yeah, he was there. He actually tried to help free Batman with one of his experiments, you know? But Superman doesn't let that happen. He puts his hand in and stops the electricity. So Ben Franklin thought that he could use electricity to like blast open the shackles. Not today, not with Supes involved. Eventually Ben Franklin's like, all right, you're on your own. I don't know what's going on here. And then when Batman asks Superman why he's doing this, Superman says, figure it out yourself. So next time your friends start flirting with your crush, just frame them for witchcraft. It'll work, trust me. Number 7, monkey business. We go now to Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, Volume 1, Issue 116 to be exact. This issue came out in 1968 and I don't think we'll ever see this on the big screen. I hope so, because if we do, I'm walking out of that big screen. The cover alone is enough. It shows Superman flying, saying, Jimmy, what's got into you? Why are you acting like an ape? And then the actual ape on the cover is like, because he's an ape, Superman, yeah, I'm the real Jimmy Olsen. We switched bodies. Yeah, they switched bodies. Apes are so strong also. Like, have you seen Planet of the Apes? Caesar just like rocks dudes off of buildings like it's no problem. There's no way he would be holding a camera. That camera would explode in his hands in a matter of seconds. Like, they're so strong. So after a malfunction of a machine, yep, they ended up switching bodies. So Jimmy Olsen's body starts, of course, literally screaming like an ape because the ape is stuck inside. And the real Jimmy Olsen, he's stuck in an ape body. And the dude, he just embraces it. He buys a green suit, he even has a cool hat to go along with it, and he continues working. Like, what a champ. He even says he'll be a simian sensation. The guy loves it. Editors, insert link. So of course somebody walks into the office and they're like, holy shit, there's a gorilla. We have to call the zoo guards right now. This can't be in here. And then Jimmy responds with puns. He's like, holy cow, I guess I'll have to explain what this monkey business is all about. Like they're gonna be like, ah, good one, Jimmy. No, like that happened in real life. That dude would be put to sleep with a dart so fast. Number 6, Orca the Whale Woman. Imagine if when Robert Pattinson's Batman came out, this was the story that we got. I would laugh so hard. So we go now to Batman issue 579. So imagine you're on a yacht, you're just chilling, right? You're hanging with your friends, having some drinks, feeling good, looking good, showing off your fancy $6 million necklace, and then bam, a whale woman just blasts into frame and rips it away. She's like, don't let her, give me that necklace. Like, first of all, so scared. Bruce is shocked. He's like, miss, can you please return that gem to its rightful owner? That'd be great, thanks. And of course the whale doesn't cooperate, so Bruce heads to the Gotham Aquarium to ask some questions. He meets Grace Baleen, who is a woman bound to a wheelchair who works at the aquarium. She gives the whole rundown on orcas and how they fight other whales that are 3 times the size of them, and how she's working on this research project with orcas, but the funding, of course, is not going well. So you probably figured out what's going on by this point. She spends her time robbing from the rich, and instead of keeping that wealth for herself, she donates it to charities. Not a bad idea. She ends up becoming an orca forever, but that doesn't last long, don't worry. She's killed by an operation ran by the Great White Shark in Detective Comics issue 819. A lot of sea drama in that one. Under the sea, we have a lot of murder, under the sea. No dancing crab choreography included. Number 6, oh yeah. Number 6, Batman Forever. Of course, on a list about batsuits, we must bring up the suit that changed our childhoods forever. The one with the bat nipples. Sounds like a Friends episode that didn't make it. The late Joel Schumacher did Batman Forever in 1995, and Val Kilmer was a pretty fun Batman. Jim Carrey was a pretty fun Riddler. Tommy Lee Jones was... It was the 90s, okay? It was weird. The weirdest detail of this version of Batman's suit has to be this. I mean, we don't need nipples on the suit. We just don't need them. We don't at all. Even if they did somehow help with chafing, they would have to be perfectly lined up all day. I would be fixing that every 15 seconds. He said he sent costume maker Jose Fernandez photos of Greek statues and opted for more of an anatomical look, hence the, shredded abs. And then when he saw the nipples on the suit, he thought, that's cool. Those right there, those some cool nipples. And he's still glad that he did it to this day. Well, so are we, because now we can talk about it some more in this lovely list. Number 5, Batman and Robin. Ah, another late Schumacher film. Okay, another suit to talk about. It's kind of hard not to talk about the costume details when it shows all the details very close up. I mean, some of the shots we get here, I swear I can smell the fabric. Like, imagine if 3D was this advanced back then. Oh my god, you'd look in your popcorn and find Robin's ass. You're like, how did this get here? The suits changed from Michael Keaton's version, yet somehow they got worse? It got worse. So now George Clooney was rocking this hard plastic nipply looking suit, and even better, Alicia Silverstone as Batgirl and Chris O'Donnell as Robin sported the same design near the end of the film. Just in case, you know, one new suit wasn't enough. I get it, I mean the new suits are supposed to prevent against frost damage, all that jazz, but how much damage protection do we need down there, guys? I mean, I know you're George Clooney and all, but like, that's a lot of armor for, you know. Number 4, Jim Gordon. So after the events of Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo's Endgame storyline, we found a new home for the Batman cowl. This time around, it belongs to former police commissioner Jim Gordon. See, his initial bat suit is actually pretty neat. It complements his lanky body, the all black look with the dark yellow outlines, and no cape. Thank God, I'd rather have Batman with no cape than a cape that looks like it got shredded by a velociraptor. Any day. I'm a fan of his entire look here, okay? Now, if we did a list of the best Batman suits, I would for sure throw this one on there. Now, unfortunately, he also has this military suit that he uses over top of that already existing cool one. They purposely designed it so it wouldn't look like Iron Man, and that worked. I mean, mostly. So the powerful armor got the job done, but it looked clunky. It didn't look nice. Fans didn't like the giant bunny ears, and they could for sure go without the War Machine type missile shoulder pads. Great storyline again, but seeing him disappear into that armor brought a frown to my face every time I turned the page. Number 3, all of the colors. So in 1937, issue 241 of Detective Comics, we find Batman on the cover with quite the dilemma. It's a dilemma we're all probably used to by now. He changes up the colors of his costume quite a few times in here, but why? Maybe he wore a similar color the day before, or hey, maybe on Wednesdays he wears pink. You never know. Or maybe this has something to do with the Comics Code Authority. See, in order to appeal to the public eye that comics weren't just this dark and gritty thing, they tried to change up his outfit a few times to keep it fun. Hey, it's pink now, look, we're having fun. So in this issue, we have Robin hurting his arm, but we also have Batman sporting some fun new colorful suits. Eventually, just putting all the colors together and rocking the infamous rainbow suit, which I'm a fan of. You know, if you can't pick one color, pick them all. Let's go. The only reason I have to include the rainbow suit on a list about the worst Batman suits is because it hurts your eyes to look at no matter what page it's on. See, some sequences show Batman punching a criminal and the yellow background blends in with the yellow part of his costume. Same goes for any background color really. Like, if I was standing here in front of a green screen with all the colors on, green would just be really hard to focus on. It would blend in with the background. It's why we don't wear green in any videos, because it looks like that in the background. So the rainbow outfit was thought to be left in the late 50s, but it made a fashionable return in Francis Manapul's Trinity issue 1. Number 2, Stan Lee's Batman. The late Stan Lee had his take on the Caped Crusader back in 2001, and DC Comics asked him to reimagine all their famous heroes as if he had done it himself, which sounds like a pretty exciting event. So we came up with Wayne Williams, a cross between Luke Cage and, of course, Bruce Wayne. And we see these in action in Just Imagine Volume 1. So he was convicted of a crime he didn't do, and then learned a few skills in the slammer while he was serving. And then when he was released, he first made a costume and tried to make some money wrestling. Okay, sounds familiar, homemade costume, some wrestling. If you're into a Batman that looks more like an actual bat, this is a great place to go. And finally, number 1, Bat Baby. Issue 147 of Batman, right on the cover, we see regular size Robin rocking a regular size Robin outfit, and then we see a Bat Baby with a Bat Baby suit to complete the picture. Look out, it's Bat Baby and Robin? Question mark? That's what a bystander is shouting right on the front cover and all. So what's going on here? Why is Batman wearing jean short overalls? Why is he a baby? Also, why is he a child? Turns out Nails Finney brought them into a trap, and now Batman has shrunk down to the size of a small child. Little baby. What's even better about this whole ordeal is that he still has the strength of a full-grown Batman. So he can kick your ass. He's just tiny. And the headlines were amazing in the news that week. Even in the comic, it says, Gangland turns Batman into baby. And then the photo is just Batman all moody standing there like, I don't know why he's moody, like he's still the same Batman, he's just small. Actually, you know what? I do know why he's moody. He's an infant. So Robin at one point even has to carry Batman to the Batmobiles, like carry him, because his little fat baby legs can't get him around so fast. So what does Batman do? He embraces it. He's like, fine, I'll dress like a baby. That's what you want, that's what you get. And he does well, or he does okay, rather. Yeah, one of the headlines that you see next reads, Bat Baby does okay for a kid. I mean, he's okay. He just rode a balloon up into the air and then took out 3 criminals as a baby, but definitely just okay, A-okay. The only soft spot on this Batman is the one on the top of his head.
Number 10. Spider-Man's 2021 hoodie suit. Spider-Man's 2021 hoodie costume is definitely an odd one. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this one didn't bother me myself too much. There are parts of it I actually kind of like. I actually really like his shoes, but I do know people who pretty passionately felt that this look is ridiculous. And I'm including it because I value the specific person's opinion who actually even mentioned that to me, and I think they made a fair point for why it was so silly, so I'm going to indulge. The Spider-Man we are talking about here is of course Miles Morales, and the look we're talking about is the one he donned before this current look that he's in right now, which is kind of a return to more of his classic look. I like to call this specific look though his hoodie costume, although to be fair that's a little confusing because he has another hoodie costume, but anyways, hoodie 2021. It basically looks like he's wearing a hoodie with leggings and of course sweet kicks. Of course I will say this costume looks super comfy, which for me makes more sense than some of the other things that superheroes are known for wearing, but it also greatly deviates from his normally sleek design, which is I think what was missing for most who weren't fans of this look. While it is a bit goofy looking, especially with the leggings, which I gotta say I kind of agree, kinda wish he had looser pants to kind of match his hoodie, this costume was actually made by one of Miles' friends as a replacement, so at least it also had a reason for existing in the story. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us and you love talking about all the dumb, weird costumes by giving this video a thumbs up. I love dumb costumes. Number 9. Wonder Woman's secretary look. Forget the old. The new Wonder Woman is here, and she is depowered and working as a spy and business owner, baby. The kind of Wonder Woman you probably never really asked to see, but the 70s gave it to us anyways. Admittedly, the actual fashion sense of this look is pretty great, I gotta say. So although in some ways this is kind of dumb, I also feel like the actual fashion, amazing. And I mean all around throughout as well. But the fact that it comes with Diana not having her powers anymore is pretty tragic, which is why it's going to make our cut. Even though this was done in an effort to actually promote feminism at the time. The revamp was actually intended by the creative team behind it to encourage other women to strive for independence, and was actually pretty well executed, I gotta say. Even though taking away Diana's powers would in retrospect be seen as a downgrade for the character in regards to her history. Which is why this makes our cut, even though I understand what they were trying to do was not that, but it unfortunately ended up being seen as a setback as opposed to a move forward for the character. Number 8. Martian Manhunter. This was really the only suggestion I got from the comments on our part 2. People were saying that we never talk about male characters in skimpy outfits and how those are dumb, and Martian Manhunter was one of the ones that was suggested. And I do agree that Martian Manhunter does have a weird outfit, but I also didn't know too much about his outfit and what it means, so I decided to look into it. And as I was expecting, while this outfit does look pretty ridiculous with Martian Manhunter's little shorts and his X-straps over his bare chest with his long flowy cape, it turns out there is actually a reason behind it, so it kinda does make sense. Martian Manhunter being a shapeshifter, it's as I expected, and apparently his clothes are actually just him, because he's a shapeshifter. It's just a weird thing to think about. His suit therefore is something he chose to shapeshift into, and it seems to be inspired by the heroes around him. Martian Manhunter in his normal form actually looks more alien even than we know him to look, and is a little bit more spiky. And so his appearance on Earth is actually him trying to stay true to his Martian heritage, while still shifting his appearance somewhat to look more humanoid, so he'll be more accepted, and he makes himself look like he's wearing clothes that he feels makes him look heroic, as that's what he wants to be. He wants to be a hero. So if you think Martian Manhunter dresses weird, it's really kind of a reflection of how Martian Manhunter sees most male superhero costumes and just superhero costumes in general, and maybe the way that we see them. In fact, I definitely see inspiration in his look from another alien superhero, Superman. You know, with his green skin and his little booty shorts shorts, which sometimes are like little briefs. It's kind of got a Superman vibe to it a little bit. Number 7, Susan Storm's cutout suit. Oh boy, this is a 90s classic in some of the worst ways, I think I can safely say. Now, I love a woman in a sexy costume, but this one is a lot, even for me. And what's worse, they made it narratively so that Sue designed this one herself, which feels not right for the character, but hey. If that feels pretty out of character for Sue, who refers to feeling like an old frump in her previous suit, you're not alone in thinking that, by the way. Many people like to defend this costume by actually saying that narratively its creation makes sense because it came from her evil persona Malice, actually, who was still possessing and influencing Sue at the time, and that this is actually an indicator of that. Well, this might be true, I'm still skeptical as to this being the real reason outside of the canon for this redesign. And even if that is the only reason she had this suit, I still don't really like it because as a Sue Storm fan, it doesn't actually come from Sue herself, but from Malice, who was controlling her at the time. Which I know Malice is kind of like a part of her, but it's like the evil part of her. So there's really not as much agency here for Sue.
In its 6th, Darkseid. Bruce Wayne was not taken seriously by Darkseid. As a matter of fact, Batman uses the element of being underestimated to his greatest advantage. Batman does not kill, but he was forced to do so when Darkseid threatened Earth. The only known substance that can kill a new god is radion. So Batman shot Darkseid with a radion bullet and himself died in the process. Darkseid, for that matter, had Batman as the last person in mind that could stop him, because he thought if anybody would, it would be Clark. So yeah, up until this point, the only human or sentient being, for that matter, that had truly made Darkseid, the god of evil of the DC universe, cowering and running away in fear, is Batman. So yeah, there you go. Batman killed Darkseid by shooting him. Halfway through, into number 5, Squirrel Girl versus Galactus. Okay, I know you all love Squirrel Girl, but come on. I get that there's a whole series called The Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, but this deserves to be on the list. This is a little much. The solo series debuted in January of 2015 and ran for 8 issues, but then was relaunched in October of that same year as part of Marvel's all new, all different branding, and was continued to be published until November of 2019 with 50 issues, for a total of 58. Both series were written by Ryan North, but in issue number 4 of volume 1, Squirrel Girl literally stops Galactus from coming to Earth by being friends with him. Come on, okay? You can't sit there typing telling me that this doesn't make this deserving of that list, okay? Like, she didn't even have to fight him, for God's sakes. Okay, that's stupid. You're just gonna talk the Devourer of Worlds into not devouring a world? What? No, that's not how that works. The waiter at Olive Garden can't stop me from shoving more bread down my throat, so how could you stop someone who's literally eating planets? And like, I get that you all love Squirrel Girl, but come on. I know that suggesting anything is gonna make people mad at me, but still, Squirrel Girl beating Galactus. No. Okay? No. It's nuts. In at 4, Justice League. The Justice Buster Batsuit is a mech suit that's part of Batman's Fenrir Contingency, which is a suit designed to take down the entirety of the Justice League. Making its feature appearance in Batman Endgame, the Joker used his virus to warp the brains of the Justice League members at the beginning of the plot. Batman was then forced to use his Fenrir protocol to eliminate his teammates before it was too late. The suit was successful in eliminating Wonder Woman, the Flash, and Aquaman, but met an even match at the hands of Superman. After a lengthy fight, they were trading blows. Superman tore through the armor and nearly killed Bruce, which would have been realistic. Until Bruce used, and I kid you not, kryptonite chewing gum to spit in Clark's face, rendering him unconscious. Come on. Okay? Like, imagine waking up to learn that you passed out because Batman spit in your face. Like, seriously, dude, please. Like, I get that we're post-COVID, but like, this wasn't post-COVID, okay? He literally kept a piece of chewing gum in his mask. He says that he keeps it in the helmet so that he can chew it and then spit it like Clark. Dude, like, okay, sure, you had miniaturized red suns on your knuckles, you had Greek supernatural weaponry, you had super fast servers and electromagnetic nerve trees for Flash, but chewing gum is the thing that takes Superman down that's like Green Lantern being taken down by a number 2 pencil.
Number 3, Mark 19 skin armor. Now it seems to me that Tony Stark is really into that whole metal but make it weird concept when it comes to his armors, and that is definitely seen in one of his earliest experiments with that concept, the skin armor. This suit was made of an adaptive liquid alloy that could simultaneously become as hard as adamantium and yet stay flexible enough to bounce and bend comfortably. It's a super cool concept and made for a pretty badass suit since it featured some upgraded versions of Stark's existing tech and was able to be controlled remotely. However, the way this suit formed is actually what makes it a rather dumb design. Basically, the flexible alloy only formed the gold sections of its armor and would only harden or form around the red parts on command, meaning that Tony would be running around like looking half dressed most of the time, which is pretty ridiculous. Check it out for yourself in 2001's Iron Man Volume 3 number 42 and let me know what you think of it in the comments below. Number 2, Iron Lantern. Hailing from Marvel and DC's amalgam universe comes Harold Stark, a combination of Hal Jordan and Tony Stark, who acts as a hero under the name of Iron Lantern. In this reality, Stark was injured after an alien ship crashed into Earth, and in an attempt to stay alive, he made an armor out of the wreckage of the ship, using the Lantern power battery he found as the power source. This suit not only allowed him to survive, it also granted him all of the powers of the Green Lantern. Using these newfound powers, Stark was operating as the Iron Lantern and took down many powerful enemies such as Madame Sapphire, Great White, and of course his arch nemesis, Mandarin Estro. Now I want to get it out of the way that I love the amalgam universe. I've talked about it in so many other videos, but honestly this hero just isn't doing it for me. Iron Man's calling card is that he's just a man, but with that ring, the iron seems pretty redundant and kind of eliminates the humanity imbued into Tony Stark. Check it out for yourself in 1997's Iron Lantern, number 1. And number 1, the Sniff Buster. Now you're probably sitting there like, what are you talking about? That doesn't exist. And I mean, technically you're right since I completely made up the name, but it'll all make sense once I explain the suit a little bit more. For a period of time, Iron Man's armor had a big old nose on the front of it. The true story is that Stan Lee, upon seeing an Iron Man cover, made an offhand comment asking, hey, where's the nose? Meaning that he thought the helmet just looked a little bit too snug to Tony's face for a nose to fit. However, this comment was misinterpreted terribly by others as meaning that Stan wanted a nose on the armor, so it ended up being added. They forced an in-story explanation for the iron nose, with Tony stating that he redesigned the mask to allow for a bit more expression, which would thus increase the fearsome aspects of his character. To no surprise, no one in the Marvel universe bought it, and many characters remarked how ridiculous Iron Man's nose hole made him look. Luckily, the nasal armor was relatively short-lived and has not re-emerged since. Go take a look at it for yourself in 1974's The Invincible Iron Man number 68.
At number 10, we have the Rainbow Batman suit from Detective Comics number 241. This is the suit where we get to see Bruce Wayne's fashionista persona as he gets to fight crime in all sorts of different colored suits, from green to purple to yellow to white to red, which on the cover looks more like a neon pink to me. And of course, rainbow. Now you might wonder why the Dark Knight would want to wear all these costumes, but as always when it comes to Batman, the explanation is purely logical and slightly convoluted. See, the Bat Diva did this in order to draw attention towards himself and away from Robin, who earlier had performed a heroic act as Dick Grayson, pushing a girl out of the way of a speeding car and injuring his arm in the process. And since Batman don't believe in work from home culture, and to his credit it is the 50s, he takes the money he would have spent on Robin's paid leave and cops himself some new fancy outfits so that no one would pay attention to Robin's arm and realize his secret identity. If you're enjoying the video so far, do me a quick solid and support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. Goes a long way. Thanks guys. At number 9, we have Raven's New 52 redesign from Teen Titans number 17. Raven's original cloak is simple, elegant, and iconic, and so to recapitulate that essence for the New 52, they took all that and put it in the garbage and just went, Raven? Needs feathers. Listen, I know she's supposed to be gloomy and mysterious and whatnot, but covering her face completely is stupid, and what they covered it with looks ridiculous. Not to mention the whole bird theme as a whole is severely uninspired. And also the knee pads. Why does she need freaking knee pads? Heck, if you're gonna take it that far, you might as well throw in some elbow pads, shin guards, and a jock strap for good measure. Morons. At number 8, we have Cyborg Spider-Man from Spider-Man number 20. 2021. This is probably the most 90s Spider-Man costume out there, though I wouldn't be surprised if one of you guys in the comments proved me wrong. Solo nearly ended Spider-Man, believing him to be Doc Ock thanks to an illusion cast onto him by Mysterio. But Peter was rescued in the nick of time by Cyborg X, who took him to Care Labs to get fixed up, where he would awake with a new metal cast, an eyepiece, and some stitches. He was even gifted a utility belt, though Spidey never puts this one to use. And while the original version of the Cyborg suit is disbanded fairly quickly, probably on account of it being so hard to look at, it's worth mentioning that a Pete from a different timeline decided to go all in with the cybernetic enhancements, leading to a truly cyborg Spider-Man whose costume is seriously done right. We're even gonna get a fresh take of the character on screen in the next Spider-Verse movie with Cyborg Spider-Woman, and I'm all about it. Well, save for the spiky shoulder guard. Personally, I feel it's a little bit out of place, but maybe we'll get a good enough explanation for it in the movie, but probably not. At number 7, we have the Superman Unchained armor from Superman Unchained number 7. Okay, look, we can all agree that the Unchained armor is undoubtedly badass looking. That's not my point here. My gripe is the fact that Superman's wearing it. You see, Kal dons the armor when he realizes that he's vulnerable to attack from the weapons wielded by General Lane's army. And the suit, which comes with a hammer and shield, is able to withstand a few blows that supposedly would have one-shot the Man of Steel. Okay then, so why does he need a shield? He is Superman after all, it's not like he needs anything other than his fists for combat. Or better yet, why doesn't he just ditch the suit altogether and just keep the shield, as it proves to be far more effective at sponging blows from Lane's weapons than the armor is. And don't even get me started on the hammer, which is literally only there to rip off Mjolnir. Not to mention how uncharacteristic and lazy it is of Superman just to put on thicker armor when a greater threat presents itself. Because it would have been much more satisfying to see Superman outwit his opponent instead of just out-tanking him. Like, okay, DC, listen up. Maybe you can use this design for some sort of Thor, Darth Maul, Megazord hybrid character, but Superman, guy doesn't need it. Give it to someone else.
Number 6, Dupe. I love Dupe, but even I can admit what a weird, dumb character he is. We don't even really know Dupe's true origin. We don't even know if he's a mutant, but that hasn't stopped him from quickly becoming one of the most bizarre X-Men related staples. His powers are pretty much completely unlimited, and while I am including him on a dumbest list, in Dupe's case I actually don't mean intellectually dumb, because one of his powers is actually having a genius level intellect, so he's actually like hecka smart. But the fact that he's pretty much Silver Age Superman when it comes to him just having whatever wild power is needed and is able to do just about anything makes him completely dumb in terms of him being just like absolutely ridiculous. Add in that he looks like a small floating kind of flying pickle with arms, or I guess he kind of looks like Slimer from Ghostbusters if you prefer, and yeah, I just mean like what is this character? What a bizarre character. Still, I love him for how ridiculous and dumb he is, so that's not to say that, you know, being dumb is always a bad thing. Number 5, Hellcow. I really hope we get Hellcow in Deadpool 3. Hellcow is such a weird character. What a gloriously dumb character. Hellcow is a vampire cow that was created by Dracula, who, reminder, does exist in the Marvel Universe. One night Dracula was flying around and he got thirsty, but all the villagers had, you know, retired for the evening, gone to bed, and they were pretty smart and superstitious enough to board up their homes and protect themselves and their necks against vampires. As a result, Dracula decided to feast on the blood of livestock, and he drained poor Bessie the cow. Her owner would find her the next morning and bury her, even giving Bessie her own little gravestone that he could visit. However, she would soon thereafter rise rave as a vampire cow as a result of that experience, joining the League of the Undead and Immortal and seeking revenge on Dracula for what he had done to her. So, Hellcow. Number 4, Maggot. Maggot is definitely one of the weirdest characters around. He is a guy who has 2 maggots that basically like make up his stomach, his digestive system, named Eenie and Meanie, who can detach from him and eat just about anything. In doing so, they also kind of power Maggot up. Because his powers are so strange and unique, he rarely gets much time in the spotlight, which honestly kind of sucks, because even though Maggot might seem dumb in terms of like his powers, and you know, I'd agree with you there, he's actually a more interesting character because of that. That's the thing with dumb characters. Dumb characters are just these glorious little weirdos that you're like, that's kind of dumb, but like I also kind of love it. Number 3, Alpha. Alpha is a character that none of us really needed and that literally literally is not very bright. He is Andy Maguire, who for a while attempted to become the sidekick of Peter Parker's Spider-Man after a freak accident different than but similar to Spider-Man's left him with superpowers. His powers, however, were not insectoid in nature, but instead allowed him to create hyperkinetic energy, being able to basically tap into this energy and channel it from universal forces. That's kind of where it's explained is coming from. And he would take the name of Alpha and would be trained by Spider-Man himself, but was reckless, and as such would end up soon after having his powers removed by Peter, who basically didn't believe that Maguire was responsible enough to have and use them. He get them back later, but I just mean, that just goes to show you, not necessarily the smartest hero. Number 2, Hindsight Lad. Hindsight Lad has to be one of the worst heroes in all of creation. What is his power? He can retrospectively see how people mess up and then like point it out to them. Who wants to hang out with that person? How about no one? Also add in the fact that this isn't actually like a superpower or anything like that. It's just a thing that Hindsight Lad does. In fact, Hindsight Lad has no powers to speak of because he blackmailed his way onto a superhero team. He found out that Robbie Baldwin, his neighbor, was secretly superhero Speedball from the New Warriors and threatened to reveal his secret identity unless Robbie would allow him to join the team. Talk about a piece of work. Eventually, Carlton Lefroy would drop the lad from his name and just be known as Hindsight, and he would act as the New Warriors kind of like guy behind the computer, but he still acted as a general nuisance to many of his teammates. During Civil War, after the Stamford, Connecticut massacre, Carlton decided to actually blame the New Warriors and used his intel to expose all their secret identities, doxing them on the internet, and also doxing himself because he was also on the team and he didn't want to seem suspicious and reveal that it was him doing it, but just shows you how terrible he is. Number 1, Grey Hulk. This is the first version of the Hulk to exist. Well, Bruce Banner's Hulk anyway. We're not counting Zemnu here. Grey Hulk as such is literally one of the dumbest around, and Hulk himself is not usually a hero known for his smarts. His connection to Bruce Banner aside, Grey Hulk is literally one of the dumbest there is. So yeah. Also sorry Hulk fans, but you know it's true. You know that Hulk is not usually the brightest bulb in the bunch.
In at 10, The Joker. Mad Love is one of the most beloved episodes of Batman the Animated Series, but the story of the episode was first told in the show's tie-in comic, The Batman Adventures. The story provides an in-depth look into Harley Quinn's origins and the full extent of her relationship with the Joker. After her anniversary plans end up being thrown out the window by Mr. J, she decides there's only one way to win her Puddin's affection: capture and kill Batman. And she succeeds, but the Joker isn't happy. If anyone's going to take Batman down, it's going to be him. And so he lashes out at Harley once again, leaving him alone with the Dark Knight. The two fight, but Batman's able to use Harley's successful scheme to his advantage, taunting the Joker that she came closer than he ever actually has to killing him, and concluding the jab by calling him Puddin', which is one of the funniest things I think Batman has ever done, because, you know, he's usually like a brooding and dark hero who refuses to kill despite all of his darkness, but I mean, like, come on. He called his greatest enemy by his girlfriend's pet name, and that's probably one of the best Batman moments ever, but it's still a stupid way to beat him, if we're all being honest. In at 9, Ultron vs. Thanos. Ultron vs. Thanos is an idea that we've been asking as comic fans for a while. However, this question was actually answered thanks to the Disney Plus series What If. In the 8th episode of season 1, we got to see what would have happened to the MCU if Ultron had won and gotten into the Vision's body. If the heroes had failed to steal it and put Jarvis's code inside, Ultron would have wiped out everything, apparently, using the Mind Stone and his vibranium body to decimate everything and everyone, until only he remained. However, it was certainly easier to do this after Thanos showed up with the other 5 Infinity Stones. We expected a climactic and epic battle, but instead, what we got was honestly pretty realistic. Ultron as Vision simply says fascinating and then uses his Mind Stone to slice Thanos in half, resulting in him collecting all the Infinity Stones at once, and then just ruining everything else, showing us that the worst mistake in the MCU was killing Vision before Thanos showed up. In at 8, Reverse Flash. A pride point for speedsters, especially evil speedsters, is how fast they can move, how they're faster than a speeding bullet, and how they're basically impossible to hit. So imagine our surprise when Reverse Flash ends up getting popped in the head by none other than Thomas Wayne in the Flashpoint timeline, so Barry could access enough Speed Force to save the world and bring his son back. Well, bring Thomas's son back. And while this apparently killed Thawne, that was far from it. Thawne started vibrating so fast as he could actually slow the destruction destruction of his brain, and this actually gave Thawne more time to try and avoid death, and gave him the ability to hold the grudge. Humiliated by getting killed by Batman of all people, Thawne sets out to be even worse than usual, even ripping up the letter that Thomas gave Barry to give to Bruce, the only contact that Bruce had with his parents since they had died. Well, the only contact a living version had, which is absolutely brutal, okay? Batman was ugly crying. It was kind of weird. But I mean, come on, a speedster getting shot in the head. It's pretty dumb. And it's 7th, Thanos. Remember when Mysterio said, now that is an Avengers level threat? Well, luckily he didn't say that on Earth 57780, because on that Earth, home of the Super Spidey Stories number 39 from 1979, because in those pages, against the efforts of Hellcat and Spider-Man to thwart him, Thanos attempted to seize the Cosmic Cube. However, Hellcat intervened by kicking the cube out of Thanos' grasp, inadvertently sending it into an adjacent alley where a young child stumbled upon it. Despite Thanos' persistent attempts to reclaim it though, the two heroes successfully prevented his retrieval. Consequently, it comes as no surprise that a number of heroes have risen to oppose him. However, his most humiliating setback occurred when, in these pages, he was apprehended by the NYPD. That's right, the New York Police Department captured Thanos. This particular incident may have also attributed to the fact that Thanos was brazenly flying around New York City with a helicopter emblazoned with his name, so we kinda, knew that he was there, virtually just like inviting arrest. But still, Thanos was arrested and lost that way. What the hell?
Number 6. The nipple suit. Batman relies heavily on his tech. His Batsuit is probably the most important of that tech. It's highly advanced in terms of super suits, and it's constantly being improved and added to. Sometimes it gets a tech overhaul to battle a villain, like the Zebra suit. Sometimes it will get a redesign to better personify where Bruce is at in his life, kinda like the Zur-En-Arrh suit. But of all the suits donned by Bruce Wayne, one stands above the rest, and all it took was the addition of a pair of nipples. In both Batman Forever from 1995 and Batman and Robin from 1997, the director, Joel Schumacher, decided that he wanted his heroes to emulate human perfection, and so he was inspired by statues of Greek gods and heroes. This is why both of his Batsuits worn by Val Kilmer and George Clooney have a shiny, muscle-adorned physique and, of course, nipples. It's really a very small detail, and if it wasn't for a close-up shot of just the chest and its extremely prevalent nipples, I might not have even noticed. But when you realize they are there, you realize that no other superhero has nipples built into their costume. This one is just iconic.
Number 5. Nightwing, red suit. Oh boy, the New 52 was a time of reinvention for a lot of characters, but then, on the other hand, it was also a time of radical change for pretty much, in most cases, really no reason. Which is kind of what happened to poor Nightwing here, because the New 52 was supposed to be giving us fresh new takes on characters. DC decided to completely revamp his look by going from his classic blue to red, which really seemed to serve no purpose that I can see myself, other than to be a very different color than the one we're used to seeing Dick wear as Nightwing, because well, I mean, it's very different. I mean, red has always been more of Jason's, or I would say even maybe Damian's color in my mind when it comes to former and current Robins, and even after donning this new suit, it was almost immediately discarded as Dick Grayson's secret identity was revealed, prompting him to change his hero name from Nightwing to just Grayson, and ditching the suit as well with all that change. So really, what even was the point of this?
Number 4. Black Condor. When Black Condor first popped up on the scene in DC Comics, his choice of garb was interesting. Richard Gray Jr. gained the power of flight from being exposed to a radioactive meteor, though he believed he had developed flight naturally after being raised by a flock of wild condors. Yes, really. So clearly there is a level of, how should we say this, creativity here. Like, he came back into society and then took someone else's identity while also being a costumed hero, and I think his superhero costume perfectly exemplifies how utterly off the rocker this guy actually is. Richard took to wearing a cape that draped out under each arm, being attached to his wrists with bracelets giving the semblance of wings, because he can fly. Get it? I'm sure that could probably have had some kind of effect on his flying, but the rest of the getup is kind of a mystery. Essentially, he wears a neck collar thing that looks kind of like a hood that connects to his big chunky belt with one piece of fabric in the front, and he accompanies that with some short shorts and some really ornate looking boots. Those are really cool. And that's kind of it. Luckily, later iterations of the character took their look in some much more cooler directions, but at first it was kind of weird.
Number 3. Daredevil and loud noises. Now, we all likely know this, but Matt Murdock's loss of vision took away the natural gift of eyesight that we all take for granted, and replaced it with echolocation, an uncanny radar sense that allows him to basically see things through sound. Unfortunately for many heroes, their greatest strength can also be their greatest weakness, and such is the case for Daredevil, as his extreme sensitivity to sound can completely incapacitate him. In Daredevil Volume 2 West Case Scenario, he is subjected to a high decibel ultrasound, 120 decibels to be exact, by the dastardly Purple Man, who knows his weapon is excruciating for a man of Daredevil's gift. Daredevil's head spins and he looks like a man under a sorcerer's spell, leaving him completely vulnerable to a follow-up attack. The same can actually be done using intense smells as well, since his sense of smell was also heightened after losing his eyesight. Although Daredevil can and does go toe-to-toe with pretty much anyone in a fight, he will get utterly emasculated by a stink bomb or a supersonic sound. Check out more of Matt Murdock for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1964's Daredevil number 1. Loud noises! Number 2, Green Lantern and wood. If you're a bit confused, that is totally okay. This is not a weakness that is common across all of the Green Lanterns. It's specific to the very first Green Lantern, Alan Scott. Despite being armed with a magical ring and a spectrum of pretty much limitless powers, Scott seemed to have another fatal weakness other than the color yellow. He first realized that this might be a problem for him after he was hit in the face with a wooden log. And then after a series of wins and victory laps, Scott realized tree bark might be his potential undoing. Put a little more succinctly, items made of wood cannot be lifted or broken by energy from the ring, nor can barriers of emerald energy stop projectiles crafted from wood. Apparently this vulnerability to wood was because the green flame was an incarnation of green growing things, and thus could not be turned against them. Guess you could say he, can't get wood. Check out the first Green Lantern for yourself, starting with 1940s All-American Comics, number 16. Number 1, Captain Marvel Jr. and his own name. Poor Freddie Freeman. Out of all of the weaknesses on this list today, he probably drew the shortest straw because his weakness is his own name. If Captain Marvel Jr. tries to introduce himself to a superpowered ally, or for some reason feels the need to say his name in the middle of a battle, he'll instantly be transformed back into Freddie Freeman, a ordinary young lad who relies on a crutch to walk. Or if he speaks his superhero alias aloud in the guise of Freddie Freeman, he'll transform into a shimmering beacon of muscly justice and give himself away. Jerry Ordway tried getting around this flaw during Captain Marvel Jr.'s sporadic appearances in Teen Titans between 1995 and 1998 by having Freeman refer to himself as CM3, since he was one of the 3 members of the Captain Marvel family at the time. Also, he could avoid accidental transformations, but that change didn't really stick around. Honestly, for someone who inspired many of Elvis's onstage looks, that is one weakness that I don't know if I can overlook. Check him out for yourself in his first DC appearance in 1995's The Power of Shazam, number 3. Number 10, Mark 1 Model 3. Okay, I want to get it out of the way right now that I am in no way talking smack about the design of the original Iron Man suit. I mean, although it was bulky and cumbersome, it's absolutely an iconic design, and more importantly, it was built with a purpose. Tony found himself in a bad situation and needed to escape, so he built an armor out of any materials available to him. Makes absolute sense. The quote-unquote upgraded gold version of this suit, however, not so much. Tony decided that the gray color of his armor was far too scary, or I guess he was kind of told that because the biggest inspiration for this redesign came from a date with Marion Rogers, who told Tony that Iron Man could really use a nice paint job, so that he'd better resemble a knight in shining armor. Tony obviously took this to heart, and the gold armor was born because he thought it would make him a more approachable hero. This design obviously didn't stick around for too long, as not long after he adopted the first iteration of the classic red and gold color scheme that the world now knows so well and loves. Fun fact though, the gold-plated armor is actually the reason Iron Man has the nickname the Golden Avenger. Check out the Mark 1 in its first appearance in 1963's Tales of Suspense number 39. Number 9, Mark 33 Submarine Argonaut. The Mark 33 armor isn't the first deep sea variant of the Iron Man armor, but it is pretty bad if I do say so myself. It is one of the 5 different Iron Man armors that Tony created from the Argonaut series, developed to augment his extremist-based armor technology. The Submarine Argonaut was a yellow armor that had clawed hands and feet, was capable of a little bit of camouflage, and had a deep sea range of about 2,563 meters. Basically, it was a pressurized suit that allowed Tony to operate in the deepest depths of the ocean. Now why is this a dumb armor, you ask? Well, mostly because Tony never actually got around to using it, or any of the 5 Argonaut suits for that matter. The armors were instead triggered via remote when the son of Ho Yinsen was shot and killed by SHIELD forces. This armor then attacked Namor and was later destroyed by Iron Man himself and left to sink to the bottom of the ocean, and has not been seen since. It was just kinda left there. Check out this sad underwater armor for yourself in its first appearance in 2006's Iron Man Volume 4, number 7. Number 8, Heroes Reborn. In 1996, Marvel created the controversial Heroes Reborn event/storyline in an attempt to reboot some of their characters. Tony Stark was no exception, and he was reborn in a new universe where he was even more of a selfish jerk than usual. And when he was wounded in an attack, Tony took up a special suit of armor to become a hero. Referred to in the storyline as the Prometheum armor, this rather unique looking suit was exclusive to the Heroes Reborn universe and honestly wasn't too well received. While most of Iron Man's armors tend to be clean and simplified in appearance, the Heroes Reborn armor took a different approach, with steel cords, lots of tubing, and two just massive exhaust pipes on the back that allow the armor to release heat. Though just a prototype, Tony was required to wear this armor's chestplate at all times in order to keep his heart beating and his lungs functioning properly. The suit didn't have an arc reactor and had to constantly be recharged in order to keep pumping. Overall, this armor was overly bulky and not visually appealing in the slightest. Instead of the more streamlined direction the armors had been going in, this one takes a step backwards, adding in musculature and separate plates that made it just way too complicated. Check it out for yourself in 1996's Iron Man Volume 2, Number 1. Number 7. Mark 52 Hulkbuster Car. Now if you're not familiar with this armor, don't worry, I also didn't know it existed until today. The Mark 52 is actually just the Mark 44 Hulkbuster seen in the MCU, but unlike the MCU's take on the comics Hulkbuster, this suit was also a car for some reason. Yep, that's right, what looks just like a simple flying car is actually a fully functioning Iron Man armor that could be deployed from the push of a button. Now in its vehicle form, the armor can achieve flight with the use of two repulsor turbines on its bottom, and then by pressing the button on the car's panel, the entire thing transformed into a Hulkbuster armor in a matter of seconds. It's basically just a transformer. This marked the first time a suit of armor in the Marvel Universe continuity was adapted from the MCU. While certain artists' depiction of the Iron Man armor Mark 42 included a helmet design lifted from the standard Iron Man helmet outline used in the MCU, the Mark 52 is the first armor with a design taken straight and entirely from the films. Now why Tony decided he needed another Hulkbuster at this point in time is beyond me, because he certainly was not fighting any big bad guys. But also why he thought it needed to be a flying car as well just makes absolutely no sense. Like, he really wasn't struggling for any money because he had just sold Stark Tower at the time, and I don't know, maybe he just wanted to see if it was possible. Either way, check it out for yourself in 2016's all new, all different Avengers Number 1.
Number 5. The Suicide Snare. This issue was released with Action Comics Volume 1, issue number 592, back in 1987. The cover of the issue, first of all, is enough to draw you in. It shows Superman with Big Barda, like, you know, with her. They're making out, and who's in the background? Mr. Miracle, just watching the whole thing. He even says the line, "Superman and my wife?" Those lines are laid across the cover, so what's going on? Well, Mr. Miracle goes home one day to find Darkseid just chilling on his couch, immediately asking where Barda is. Darkseid gives him a tape to play, which may be the scariest moment of my life. Like if Darkseid was like, "Here's a tape," I'd be like, "No, I don't have a tape player. What did you do? What did you do? Oh god, it's gonna be so bad." So he clicks play and sees Big Barda dancing for sleaze. They don't show it, but it's implied that it's sexual in nature. Like, you know, I don't know why I did that. So Sleaze takes mind control Barda and Superman to an adult film director. Yeah, his name is even Grossman. Like Grossman. Grossman. His idea is that the adult film is going to make so much money that basically it can pay for an army to go against Darkseid, which is a pretty, worth a shot. So in comes Mr. Miracle to save the day, releasing the two from Sleaze's mind control. Whew, that would have been a real awkward brunch if Mr. Miracle didn't show up. Quite the miracle if you ask me. Number 4, Super Lion. This 1958 Actions comic grabbed readers' attention in the 243rd issue when the title page showed Superman as a lion, and the headline was "The Lady and the Lion." So you have to open it, you just have to. So after Superman uses his telescopic vision, he sees trouble. Trouble in the form of a young lady on a Mediterranean island in danger during an earthquake. So Superman flies over and saves the day. He soon realizes by the rubble that this is the Temple of Circe. So it wasn't actually Circe, it was the next rendition of Circe. And she ends up making him consume this potion while demanding him to marry her. Nice pitch, not bad. "If you do not come back to me for the antidote before the next dawn," she continues, "you will turn into the creature you most resemble by nature." See, if that was me, I'd turn into like a toad or like a little turtle or something. Something just kind of like, you know, something not the best. So as fate has it, Superman becomes a lion. Yeah, his lion's heart and strength made him do the whole spiel. It could be a lot worse though. The Man of Steel ends up working at the zoo and he ends up playing with people. Like, he has a pretty good time. Really dumb concept or best idea ever? I don't know, I'm kind of in the middle. Let us know in the comments. Would you see this in theaters? Superman as a lion, just like putting people's heads in his mouth? Let us know, I kind of would. Number 3, Superman vs. Muhammad Ali. You gotta love it. This one-shot made its debut back in 1978, written by Dennis O'Neil and Neil Adams. It featured the Man of Steel and, of course, Muhammad Ali. So what's going on? How is this a real thing? Well, it was part of an all-new collector's edition numbered C56. So basically, this alien named Ratlar, who is part of a species known as the Scrub, visits Earth and demands that we pick our best fighter to go against theirs. Nice. So their best fighter being a behemoth named Hunya. And if we refuse, well, the Scrub is just going to destroy the planet. So Muhammad Ali argues that since Superman isn't technically from Earth, he must be the one who fights. So Ratlar is amused by this, so he wants to know who's the best. So he pins up the two champs against each other, Superman versus Muhammad Ali. Now of course you're thinking Superman would toast this guy, hands down, no competition. Well, the fight is set to take place on Bodace, which is orbiting a red star, so that means there's no powers for Superman. So Muhammad Ali trains Superman to become a boxer, like a human boxer, and cue the Rocky Balboa music. So they start training in Superman's Fortress of Solitude, throwing proper left hooks, you know, the whole thing. Might as well train without powers, right? So the unlikely duo are given 24 hours to train, which is just unreasonable. But by using a time warping device, they're able to train for a couple of months. Ratlar figures out the device is being used and boom, training is over, boys, nice try. So the fight is broadcasted intergalactically and thousands tune in naturally. I mean, Superman puts up a good fight, but ultimately Ali is the greatest boxer to ever live. So Supes goes down. And now Ali has to fight Hunya, even predicting which round he'll go down by. Now of course Ali doesn't hold up too well against an alien at first, but he eventually knocks him out of the ring in the 4th round, just as he said. Take that, bucko. Boom! Number 2, Ants. Yeah, Ants. Coming at you from Action Comic Volume 1, Issue 296, The Invasion of Ants. It's as dumb as it sounds, or maybe brilliant, I can't tell. The cover alone is super weird and kind of inviting. It shows Superman on the side of a building, but he's got like an ant's head. So off the bat, I'm pretty curious what the hell's going on. He's even saying the words, "Follow me, soldier ants, buzz buzz buzz. We must capture Lois Lane, buzz buzz, she will be our queen." Okay, you got it, man. So after a colony of giant ants was mutated from a nuclear war on another planet, they decided to come check out Earth. So Superman uses red kryptonite radiation to give himself an ant's head. Not a mask, important to say, like a head. He has an ant's head. He's got an ant's head, guys. And he communicates with them with that head. This is like the ultimate amalgam character. Like, Superman even explains how bad this could get if murder ants roamed the city, as if we didn't already know. It even has a photo of ants like lifting up the Empire State Building and like, so as long as Superman focuses on maintaining an ant's head, he can communicate with it. Similar to how Krypto turned into a collie. If this was a live action movie, people would light the theater on fire. There's no way he's like, buzz, buzz, buzz. Everyone's like, no, I'm leaving. You weren't ready. We're not ready for this. And finally coming in at number 1, the New Guardians. So back in 1988, DC had a short run with one of the best villains ever, Snowflame. So what makes Snowflame so strong and wild is cocaine. This guy even says the words, "Cocaine is my god," on the first page. The New Guardians have trouble. Of course they have trouble. His every cell burns with white hot ecstasy. In his words, not mine. Ram attacks and it doesn't do much. A blow like that would have sent an ordinary man reeling, says Snowflame. Would it be funny if he was like, a blow like that can't work against a man on blow, and it was like, and just rocked him. Yeah, he even says the more you fight back, the more you fan the fires of my high. This is a real thing. I mean, this could be a live action movie. Just like an old jack dude on coke, just boxing the Justice League.
Number 10, Zeitgeist. We're talking all kinds of all-around dumb with this character. Zeitgeist was a member of the early 2000s version of X-Force that we'd come to know later as X-Statix. In fact, he was their leader. For those who are unfamiliar with X-Statix, it's a publicized superhero team who mainly performs heroic deeds for the paycheck and the ratings. When it comes to Zeitgeist, he's one of the worst of the lot, to be honest. Axel Clooney's mutant-based powers cause him to vomit acid, something that first manifested during a romantic night out with a girl in the midst of them kissing. Not only are Axel's powers bizarre and quite dangerous, but he also doesn't seem to be a great team leader, to be honest. In fact, he even at one point conspired with Coach to have almost his entire team killed, and even then, This plan backfires as Axel himself gets killed during the rescue attempt, although he would later be revealed to have miraculously survived the incident and would of course return. Comics. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that subscribe button? Get all those notifications, baby! Number 9. Squirrel Girl. You know how much I love Squirrel Girl. Doreen Green is one of my personal favorite characters, but even I can admit how ridiculous she is. For this list, we're going to be considering a few different takes on the word dumb, by the way. We're going to interpret it as both unintelligent in terms of a character's purpose or creation, characters that are seemingly so bizarre that you might consider their existence, their very existence, or their power set dumb. We're also going to consider heroes who have been treated in a dumb way in terms of how they were utilized and stories sort of involving them. And finally, we'll also just be talking about one or two real dum-dums, which are honestly pretty rare when it comes to heroes in the Marvel Universe, because many of them are actually super geniuses. When it comes to Squirrel Girl, she is a mutant who was introduced as a major fan of Iron Man and the Avengers, but whose mutant power set involves her being able to communicate with squirrels, in addition to a physical mutation which makes her somewhat resemble one. She got a big bushy tail. I love you, Doreen, but admittedly, you are pretty ridiculous. Number 8. Squid Boy. I kind of feel mean calling Squid Boy dumb, but what I really mean to say is that he was kind of like squandered in my opinion. The way he was dealt with in the comics I think was just kinda dumb. Allow me to elaborate. Sammy Perret was pretty much the reason that Juggernaut actively worked towards becoming more of a heroic figure. Sammy was a big part of Juggernaut's redemption arc. The two met when Professor X, en route to the mutant school with Sammy in tow, headed off route due to the fact that he was unable to psychically reach the X-Men. They were found to be joined with Juggernaut in a battle against Black Tom, and at one point Sammy saved Juggernaut's life during this fight. This created a bond between the two, which was shattered when Squid Boy stumbled into a meeting with the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Juggernaut was working undercover, posing as a member, while really working as an informant for the X-Men at the time. However, Sammy didn't know that, and when he stumbled into the meeting, he accused Juggernaut of being a traitor before Black Tom just killed Squid Boy. This would break Kane's heart and start him down a path that would ultimately lead to him becoming a villain again. Although even then, the death didn't serve to get him there like overnight or anything. This took quite a while, but I would say it was used as a little bit of a catalyst to give him like less ties to the heroes and just like set him on that path. And honestly, I just think Squid Boy deserved better. He was kind of like a really cool and important character, especially for Juggernaut, so kind of feels like he got fridged a little bit. Number 7. Bird Brain. Bird Brain is like something out of a fever dream. He is horrifying to behold, but even though on the surface he might seem dumb, see his appearance and his name, Bird Brain, he actually has a really tragic and awful story. He was actually a prisoner of the Animator and was experimented on, being a creation made as a result of experiments in genetic splicing, where human DNA was spliced with animal DNA. Eventually, he would seek to freak the other experiments and become the leader of these animates. But boy oh boy, that character design, I'm just saying. Bird Brain, just look at him. Doesn't look like a very bright character, does he?
Number 6. Ablative Armor. This is another one of Tony's armors that wasn't supposed to be dumb, silly, or weird, it just kind of turned out that way. The Ablative Armor was a prototype space armor designed for an impact-heavy environment. It's made up of tiled pieces that could be manipulated by a force field to dynamically protect him from projectile attacks, while also being used as ranged weapons as well. Basically, picture those bicycle helmets that were specifically designed to break on impact, as a way to absorb the shock of the crash and thus protect the bicyclist's head. That's the sort of design Tony was going for with this armor, made entirely of little tiles that are designed in such a way to, you guessed it, break on impact. Once a tile is broken, it pops off and another one slides into its place, and new tiles are constantly being generated. And they're even capable of separating from the armor and, kind of just doing their own thing. There's no doubt that it's a unique concept and might be one that Tony would come back to later on, but it's a little bit clunky and overall just a little nightmarish to look at. Take a look for yourself, starting with its first appearance in 2003's Iron Man Volume 3, number 71. Number 5. 1602 Armor. I think that everyone can see what Neil Gaiman and Adam Kubert were going for with the Iron Man design from the 1602 miniseries. It is a steampunk-esque design from the Middle Ages, and that sounds like a great idea on paper, but in execution it's actually very over-designed and somehow more complex in the Mark I armor. In the world of 1602, Anthony Stark is Lord Iron, a man who was taken captive during the Anglo-Spanish War and forced to make weapons, after being subjected to torture by this universe's version of Bruce Banner named David Banner. Later on, after Banner becomes the Hulk, Stark is summoned by the King of England to track Banner down. Needing some sort of protection in order to survive, Stark dons his iron armor that is powered by lightning bottles that provides him with super strength and near invulnerability alongside a couple other fun electricity powered gadgets. Stark eventually found the Hulk, and despite his pleas for forgiveness, Stark continued to attack him until a much bigger threat forced the two of them to team up. With a busy paint scheme and design, the 1602 armor ends up making Iron Man look a bit like a Doctor Who villain, which probably wasn't the intention, and that is why it's on this list today. Check it out in 2005's Marvel 1602 New World number 2. Number 4. Mark 6 Hydro Armor. So usually whenever Tony has to go underwater, he just dives right in and the armor protects him. However, in a few cases, Tony has had to dive pretty deep into the ocean, and obviously the pressure could crush even a regular armored suit with ease. So Tony wound up creating a special armor built to withstand those pressures, which became the Mark 6 Hydro Armor. The Hydro Armor has all the standard features of the regular Iron Man suits, but reconfigured to be more effective underwater. That means there's carefully adapted repulsor beams, more life support, grapples, a feature that fires an underwater electric shock, and the ability to release an inky chemical like an octopus. The armor is treated with lights and a bioluminescence to allow Tony to see in the pitch darkness of the oceans. It's also maneuverable enough for Tony to handle fighting whales, sharks, or the Submariner himself. He doesn't use it as often as other armors, but this suit proves Tony can handle pretty much any environment pretty well. Now, why is this armor dumb, you ask? Well, like I said, he doesn't use it too often, but also because he's wearing armor just inside another armor. You can imagine how uncomfortable that would be, and honestly, you'd think with those seemingly endless resources, he would just make one that just did everything. Check out the first Hydro armor in 1987's Iron Man number 218.
Number 3. Emma Frost in Humans vs. X-Men. Emma Frost's look following in Humans vs. X-Men is something that I think is dumb, because I kind of think what happened to her character in that story was kind of dumb. Although, as someone who really enjoys Emma and enjoys her, in more of a hero role, it makes sense that I would feel that way. People who might be more fans of Emma in a villain role may have actually kind of liked what happened with her character in this story, and honestly, if you like it, that's fine. But I think either way, we can all agree, regardless of what this costume represents for the character, that it is objectively a pretty terrible costume. It honestly makes me think of what Emma cosplaying as Penance might look like. This mainly black look was one Emma donned near the end of Inhumans vs. X-Men, after it was revealed that Emma had, basically been manipulating the X-Men and mutant kind into fighting against the Inhumans. It also featured a combo Cyclops and Magneto style helmet that also kind of reminds me of Professor X's Krakoan era Cerebro helmet look. While the helmet may work on those other characters, it just doesn't really work for me with Emma. I just feel like a helmet for her is a weird choice.
Coming in at number 2, it's Catwoman. The history of Catwoman's look is a long and honestly incredibly kind of odd story. Over time, she would go through a number of looks until it eventually became a leather suit which had a more practical vibe, matched with a pair of cat eyes goggles, and it became the character's most popular costume, with later redesigns all primarily retaining the key elements of that suit. But in the very beginning, Selina Kyle was just a woman in a green dress that was also a thief. That kind of checks out for the comics at the time, and it also felt kind of unique in my opinion. Compared to all the other zany villains, she kept it rather low key. But that wouldn't last. Eventually, in 1940's Batman number 3, Selina Kyle donned an orange costume with a cape with the super great addition of a terrifying full cat face mask. This was basically like a mascot's headpiece, but a bit smaller, which I'm sure made it more practical, but for me, it's utter nightmare fuel. I don't know what it is about animal heads on human bodies, but I am not here for it. Basically, she kept the dress element that she started with, but now, it was orange, with an incredibly high popped up collar, and it was combined with a huge reddish orange cape and tiny little blue heels for added comfort. Then she topped it all off with a terrifying full headpiece, and now I have to watch videos of puppies before I go to sleep at night. Thanks a lot.
Number 1. The Real Lobo from New 52. The Real Lobo. Oh boy. New Lobo, who dis? Although there have been quite a few New 52 redesigns that I've discussed on this series of lists where we talk about dumb costumes, Lobo probably takes the cake here. The whole new look he had when he was revealed as the real Lobo in the New 52, the first version to appear was initially said by this Prime Earth Lobo to have been an imposter, was so different from the original and so serious that it completely ruined the character for a lot of people. I will say I do think this design is objectively pretty cool. Like, I think this character looks great, but it's not Lobo. This doesn't, no, just not for Lobo. For Lobo, this is objectively ridiculous. Number 10. Wolverine's patch disguise. Wolverine's patch disguise. Okay, bub. So you know I'm a big Wolverine fan, and if you follow me elsewhere on the interwebs, you may also know I'm a big patch fan. However, even I, a major fan, can acknowledge how ridiculous this look and disguise is. While the Gambit miniseries we got recently did help to justify Gambit's kind of weird costume choices, the Patch miniseries definitely did not do that. Although that miniseries, written by Wolverine writing legend Larry Hama, which takes us back in time for an untold tale from the Patch era, is still amazing, and you should definitely check it out. The funny thing is how even in the comics, the other characters who interact with Patch and Madripoor eventually fess up to the fact that they pretty much always knew Patch was Wolverine, admitting that his attempt at a disguise is as ridiculous and dumb as we all thought it was. Still, I do love the Patch look, so this is more me pointing out how silly it is, as opposed to dumb in like a bad way. This is actually a lovably dumb superhero suit, I would say. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that like button. Number 9. Superman Red and Blue. Admittedly, these designs are actually kind of really cool, but it's more the power sets that come with them and how they attempted to, in essence, reset Superman with these looks that makes them kind of dumb. Although I do admire DC for wanting to change up the design and the character, which honestly was a revolutionary choice. The fact remains that this is comics, and returning to a status quo, especially for a character as old and as respected as Supes, is kinda necessary, which is why this didn't really work and a lot of people didn't really like it. Number 8. Swordsman. I don't know about you, but I personally find Jacques Duquesne's look a little silly. Like, what is happening with that helmet? Is that a helmet? It's not, right? Because it's like attached to his whole outfit, which is also really weird. What's happening there? Also, I don't mind the tunic and the tights, but the weird pink and purple color combination here is interesting for color choices. At least that's how I see the colors. I don't know if you guys see pink and purple, but that's what I'm seeing here. And the fact that while he has gloves on to protect his hands, he has nothing to cover his arms, except for, I guess, those armbands. What are the armbands for? Are they supposed to protect him, or are they like just for adornment? The thing I love about the modern look for the Kotati version of this character, by comparison to the original human swordsman who first appeared in Marvel Comics back in the 60s, is that at least this plant version, while still not having full sleeves, had the improved design of wearing bracers. Honestly, I think that makes more sense for a master swordsman rather than gloves and armbands. And also, just for context, I was talking about the original swordsman design there, so. Number 7. Azrael's Batman. As per Saya Dubray's suggestion from the comments on part 1 of this list, I had to include Jean-Paul Valley's Batman outfit here. You're completely right, Saya. It is one of the most 90s outfits around. And while I am a big fan of dumb 90s outfits, that doesn't make them any less dumb. It just means that I love things that are dumb, which is I think fine. And this outfit is definitely included in the list of dumb 90s outfits for sure. From the weird cape collar to the metal accents and back again to the insane amount of muscle definition that we can see through what must be the tightest fitting outfit ever. Also, metal garters. I mean, having a metal garter on your leg, I imagine that has to be uncomfortable. Number 6. Vision. Marvel Comics initially had a completely different character who is known as the hero Vision. This was actually back, I believe, when they were Timely, before they were known as Marvel Comics. Marvel Comics would ultimately, of course, ditch their original version of the character and later get a completely new version, an android instead of an alien, who would end up as the Vision we know and love today. Not only is this original Vision's costume a product of the times, that insanely thick gold belt that he's wearing, but if you consider Martian Manhunter's costume to be ridiculous, Vision likely inspired that look, having a similar origin and a similar appearance initially, and appearing 15 years earlier in the comics in 1940, whereas Martian Manhunter, I believe, first appeared in 1955, so yeah. Number 5. Mangaverse Black Cat. Mangaverse Black Cat has a pretty wild look. To be fair to the universe, this one fits, I would say, in regards to, you know, a manga look, but boy oh boy is it strange when you think of Black Cat's standard look over on Earth 616. I mean, Black Cat has always been a sexy character, as many are in comics, but she doesn't usually have quite a deep v-neck. I'm not sure how exactly this suit also really functions. It must be made of some very firm material or like glued into place for it to stay on. Also missing are the tufts of white fur we're used to to seeing Felicia wear, which I actually do miss. I really like those. I still feel like those could have been incorporated in some way in this look, but I guess they wanted to move away from having this version of the character look too similar to her, 616 counterpart, which honestly, fair enough, but still the deep V and the super long claws for me feel pretty weird. Maybe it's just because I'm not as into manga as I used to be, I don't know, but that's where we're at. Number 4, Doctor Strange, a new Sorcerer Supreme. The 90s was a time when many folks got new looks. Some of them were, actually almost all of them were pretty terrible. But that's why we love them, right? Steven was not exempt from this. He got one of the most mystical 90s looks after years of having what I would say was a relatively unchanged costume. It didn't change that much, and even today it's kind of got a similar vibe. His costume was tweaked here and there, but usually for the most part it's just been slightly updated. But this was a pretty crazy refresh for him. His hair was even different. This transformation took place in issue number 75 of Doctor Strange Sorcerer Supreme, where Steven revealed himself at the end as the true Doctor Strange. The sunglasses are what really get me with this one, though honestly, kinda wanna cosplay as 90s Strange now. I mean, what a vibe. Also, I love that he comes out and he's like, the sun, I must put on sunglasses. To make sense of why he's wearing sunglasses. Which, I mean, you gotta make sense of that, otherwise how am I supposed to accept as a reader? Number 3, Starfire from Red Hood and the Outlaws. Based on how the comments looked for part 2, I can already feel the animosity surrounding this point just building up, just from me even mentioning it. I could end the point here and I feel like people would rage. But regardless, I'm gonna dive into my perspective of this one anyways, because, well, I mean, that's what I'm here to do, so that's what we're gonna do. Talking about costumes that I think are somewhat dumb, and so we're gonna get into that. As I've said before though, and I will say again, dumb to me doesn't always mean bad. It can mean illogical, silly, or contradictory. It doesn't necessarily mean bad. I love a lot of bad costumes myself, so they're not bad, they're just, I don't know, on paper good. Does that make sense? Well, I don't actually mind the design. I do think this look for Starfire was a bit much. I do think Starfire makes sense wearing less based on her energy absorption abilities. However, that being said, her first costume was basically just like a one-piece swimsuit with some cutouts. This is like not even a bikini level of coverage. It's like a bikini bottoms with cutouts with like a collar shoulder thing and pasties. And I mean, it's definitely an homage to that original look, but they undressed it even more for like really no reason. Add in the fact that Starfire was also an amnesiac at the beginning of this run, and I feel like we could have done better by Corey here. It would actually be less ridiculous to me if Corey was the one to have chosen this with all her memories attached. Then it would actually have some agency. This was kind of just a weird time in general for her character. Also, because it bears repeating, apparently, I am not critiquing the outfit because it is sexy. It's more the issue of how extreme it is and what was going on for Starfire in the story when she wore this look. I like sexy costumes. I like characters who wear sexy costumes. That's all fine with me. Number 2, Superman's t-shirt and jeans look. I mean, what even is this look? I understand wanting to modernize your character's appearance and give them something totally different, but a t-shirt and jeans just seems a little too low-key. And I know it had a narrative explanation, but still, it's pretty ridiculous. This is the outfit Superman wore when he drove around the US on a motorbike. He couldn't fly it at the time, and what a time it was. I will say though, this one would be really easy to cosplay at least, so it gets some points for that, because I mean, anyone could do this look. I could do this look. I could be this Superman. Number 1, Red Sonja's chainmail bikini. Now, of course, I have cosplayed as Red Sonja, but even I can admit that her outfit is pretty ridiculous. And I say this with much love for this outfit. The whole point of wearing chainmail is to protect you, so wearing it in a bikini form, it doesn't really make any sense. The only thing I can say about this that kind of makes sense is Red Sonja really doesn't care what other people think of her, so I could see her wearing a chainmail bikini because you just didn't care, but it's not good armor, you know what I mean? And sure, it's an iconic look that I will happily wear any day of the week, well, as long as I'm feeling like wearing a chainmail bikini, but that doesn't change how goofy it is, as is evident by many of those who write and draw her, changing up what she wears inside the comics while kind of saving that iconic look more for either a single moment in a story or just for the cover. So I feel like even creative teams acknowledge this. Number 10, Superman's new costume. Superman at one point had a new costume made for him. The costume was created for him by Lex Luthor, but Superman apparently didn't recognize his bald nemesis because he was in a disguise, i.e. he was wearing a wig. The other fail here on Superman's part comes from the fact that there was literally something built into the suit that he should have noticed. A giant ball of lead. well, maybe not a giant ball of lead, but a sizable ball of lead, you'd think Superman would see that and immediately be suspicious, because although yes, he can't actually use his X-ray vision on lead, that makes it a lot more obvious that like, hey, that's lead. The lead actually contained kryptonite, Superman's weakness, and Luthor designed the suit so that he could trigger when the lead would be eroded away by acid to reveal the kryptonite, which would weaken Superman at the most opportune time. Also, Superman, this suit is just not very good. How did you not notice something was up with this? It literally has a giant green box across the chest that just reads in blocky letters Superman, and it's bright yellow with purple accents. Bruh. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that like? Number 9. Big Barda is defeated by her own weapon. At one point, Big Barda is living on Earth and she has her purse stolen. The man who steals it takes chase, not realizing who he is just stolen from and that a powerful weapon, her Mega Rod, is in that purse. While escaping into the sewers, he runs into another being from Apocalypse, Sleaze. Sleaze takes the purse and when Big Barda finally catches up, surprises her by knocking her out with her own weapon, because he knows how to use a Mega Rod. He later would use the Mega Rod to control Barda's mind and will, and even tried to force her and Superman to make a raunchy tape together using Barda's Mega Rod. Oh geez, Sleaze. Oof. Number 8. Wonder Woman is bound. One of the dumbest ways that Wonder Woman has been defeated actually correlates to one of her most classic and well-known weaknesses, being bound. In fact, traditionally, this only worked if she was bound by a man. Doing so would reduce her to becoming simply mortal, stripping away all her godlike powers and abilities. Although, to be fair, even a normal woman might be strong or skilled enough to actually escape these bonds. So you would think Wonder Woman might also be. And yes, I understand that this weakness also has symbolic significance for this character, but relative to the character and how powerful she normally is, it's still kinda dumb. Because it's like, yeah, you're powerful all the time, but if a man bounds you, that's it? You just lose it all? Wow. Harsh. Number 7. Hulk loves puppies. If you can believe it, at one point Hulk was actually defeated by his love of puppies. This was revealed to be a method that S.H.I.E.L.D. used to successfully calm Hulk down. Hulk has even stated in the comics before that his favorite animal is a dog, so I guess this makes sense in that regard, but that doesn't make it any less ridiculous. Hence why it's on this list. Number 6. Wolverine's no nose. Wolverine's nose is not really a suit at all, but it is a whole look that Wolverine had for a time that was bizarre, and I thought, hey, if Tony's iron nose can make the cut on AJ's part 1, it's important that I also include Wolverine's nose on part 2 here. While Iron Man having a nose added to his suit was weird for the character, Wolverine had the opposite problem of completely losing his nose, which was also weird for the character. However, at least this was more of a stylistic choice inspired by the story than, you know, an arbitrary change to the design based on where Iron Man's eyes are. So I will at least say that in the defense of this pretty strange look for the character. It came as a result of Wolverine having the adamantium coating ripped from his bones by Magneto, which also turned him feral. For a few years he'd become more bestial in nature than he normally was, which apparently also meant his nose, I guess, had to go, becoming more of a flat central spot on his face with 2 nostrils. Kinda like became pushed into his face almost. I mean, honestly, this version of Wolverine almost becomes unrecognizable when you take the nose off. Number 5. Smallville's Aquaman. Whether we're talking sleeves or no sleeves, second generation or first generation, the Aquaman look for Smallville was pretty ridiculous and honestly kinda dumb in a bad way. While I typically try to approach dumb lists with less of that kind of outlook because, you know, dumb doesn't always have to mean bad and it definitely doesn't usually mean bad for me, this costume in my opinion is actually pretty atrocious. I honestly, I don't really like this one. Honestly, I think I'd rather have the Golden Age look with the weird fins on his arms and his legs over this one. It just looks like a weird jogging outfit to me, and I know it's probably supposed to be like a wetsuit, but no, just let's pretend it didn't happen. Except we can't because it's on this list, so now we all have to remember it. Number 4. The Crossing Thor. I mean, everyone in The Crossing looked pretty wild, but Thor Thor is definitely up there for me personally. The Crossing is the event where we learned that this whole time Iron Man had been basically a sleeper agent for Immortus, aka an alternate timeline version of Kang the Conqueror. The whole time! Dun dun dun! In honor of this very important and historical time, Thor and many of the other Avengers ended up with kind of new looks. Now, Thor's costume was definitely the most 90s look I think I've ever seen. The only thing it's missing really for me is pouches, honestly. What it lacks in pouches though, it makes up for with everything else in abundance. Tons of chains and elaborate excessive harnesses, and one of those weird like face masks that covers part of your face, like the sides and the top, but leaves a hole on the top of it for your hair to come out. And of course, I believe this was actually supposed to be what future Thor was meant to look like in this comic, in like another timeline, despite this look truly screaming 90s. In the story, this appeared to be a vision that we got of what a future Thor would look like. Now, thank goodness that hasn't ended up happening in this current timeline, at least not yet anyways. I don't know, that might still be somewhere lurking.
Getting close to the end, in at number 3, Cobalt Blue. While in the comics Malcolm Thawne is the long-lost twin brother of Barry Allen, he is also Cobalt Blue, one of a number of evil speedsters of the Flash that wielded the blue flame. In the Arrowverse, however, Cobalt Blue is Eddie Thawne, who's brought back to life by the negative Speed Force in order to make him their avatar. Spoiler alerts for the series finale of The Flash, by the way. Okay, you've had enough time. To erase the Reverse Flash from the timeline, Eddie shoots himself in the heart as he is a direct ancestor of the Speedster. His death created a paradox since Eddie did not leave behind any children to continue the Thawne name. So Eobard, aka the Reverse Flash, is never born. The paradox though also caused a wormhole to open up and start expanding, pulling Eddie's body into it. Then in the final season, it is later revealed that Eddie was resurrected by the negative Speed Force in 2049 to become its new avatar. He originally worked as a scientist at Mercury Labs known as Malcolm Gilmore until he was struck by a red lightning bolt from the negative Speed Force, mimicking Barry's origin story. However, the way his storyline ends, again, Flash season finale spoilers, is by Barry convincing him to let go of the hate and remaining the negative Speed Force avatar. They also have a climactic battle with all of the past Speedster villains that lasts like 2 minutes and then they all disappear. So yeah, Barry literally beats the negative Speed Force talking to Eddie. God. I love The Flash, but come on, jeez. Penultimately, and at number 2, musical. And no, this isn't about Music Meister, because within the pages of Final Crisis, utilizing her legendary lasso of truth, Wonder Woman releases Darkseid's consciousness from Turpin's body, and despite being physically defeated, Darkseid's dying essence continues to drag the entirety of reality towards annihilation. Time and space crumble as the catastrophic effects intensify until only Superman remains. Engulfed in darkness at the culmination of existence, he struggles to replicate a machine known as the Miracle Machine, an apparatus that's capable of granting wishes, which had been revealed to him by Brainiac 5 during his journey to the future. Darkseid's essence resurfaces, coveting the machine, but Superman ultimately obliterates him by employing his last reserves of superpowered breath to emit a harmonious song, countering the vibrational frequency of Darkseid's life force, ensuring his ultimate demise. Yeah, Superman sang Darkseid to death, and if that's not stupid, I don't know what is. And finally, in at number 1, Batman vs. Hulk. Talk about one-sided fights, right? Okay, like Batman standing up to Superman is one thing. They're within the same universe, he can get kryptonite, he's rich, I get it. Shockingly enough, Batman seemingly achieved the impossible feat of defeating the Hulk as well in the days of 1981 when DC and Marvel were still on friendly terms and the concept of separate universes hadn't really established yet. They occasionally collaborated on crossover stories, such as what unfolded in DC Special Series number 27. Written by the late Len Wein and illustrated by Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, in this extraordinary encounter, Batman unexpectedly crosses paths with a rampaging Hulk, who had been manipulated by the Joker to see Batman as an adversary. So, the Hulk saw Batman and, kinda got mad and attacked him because, adversary. So, Batman, recognizing his immense power, somehow evaded every single one of Hulk's blows because even one of them would kill him instantly. And then, somehow, with calculated precision, he drops a pellet of knockout gas, which disoriented Hulk, and then somehow, Batman kicked the Hulk in the stomach, which made him inhale the gas that then knocked him out. So yeah, That's right, Batman kicked the Hulk in the gut and actually made him flinch so bad he had to inhaling gas that made him pass out. Yeah, that's also pretty damn stupid, but I'm not sure.
Kicking off the list at number 10, we have the zebra print suit. So ever since those party rock guys started shuffling around town, we've seen a lot of teens rocking the zebra print look. And while it might be a nice way to draw attention to your legs and maybe your fresh new clean white Vans, it's not the best look for, say, I don't know, a bat suit. So yeah, back in 1960, we got the pleasure of meeting Zebra Man, who's a villain that uses magnetic lines of force after he created a device that granted him these magnetic powers. So Batman and Robin both got a close-up look at this machine, and maybe Batman got a little bit too close because his suit and skin turned into the same zebra stripes that we saw. So now we have Zebra Batman. The only difference was he didn't have the belt that Zebra Man used, so he wasn't able to control said new powers. And it just looked, well, you know how it looks. And before we go on to number 9, if you guys could go ahead and smash that like button right down below, because it helps us out quite a lot here in the studio. You guys are the best. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being fans. Now let's get back to some Batman suits. Number 9, 1940s serial Batsuit. So the first ever live action Batman was played by an actor named Lewis Wilson back in 1943. And he was part of this 15-chapter serial from Columbia Pictures and included Douglas Croft as Robin as well. And I'll get into the suit design in just a sec, but let's just talk about the storyline first. I mean, we have the Batman during World War II, and he's trying to take down Agent Dr. Dacca and put an end to his plans. See, this was right after the attack on Pearl Harbor, and Dr. Dacca was operating a sabotage ring in Gotham City. So naturally, it's time to suit up. Now fans look back at the costume design and cringe. I mean, nowadays everything is so sleek and military, so when you see this, it comes off as a little silly. I mean, the arms and legs are baggy. It looks like a bat suit your uncle pulls out every Halloween. You know, the same one he's had for like 50 years. And the belt too? Dude, how the hell are you sneaking up on some crooks when you're literally wearing a disco ball for a belt? You'll blind them before anything. They won't even see you coming. They won't have eyes left. What does it for me personally is the uneven bat ears. It looks like a Great Dane when its ears are taped up when it's young. Number 8, Sir William. This one comes straight from Earth 9, and DC says that this universe still exists, which is pretty neat. So basically the idea was in 1997, DC Comics launched Tangent Comics, which was a new take on our hero's origins. We all love those. So as you guessed from the name Sir William, this Batman was fresh out of the Arthurian times. Sir William was a knight of King Arthur's Round Table who had to pay for some previous faults. See, Morgan Le Fay seduced him and convinced him to fight King Arthur using her magic. So, not a nice guy. He's actually probably great, I don't know. So he was confined to his own castle, which as far as groundings go, not that bad. I mean, I never got to hang out in Castle Bat when I got grounded growing up, so what the hell is this? Sir William discovered that he had the ability to project his spirit into his armor and have it walk free. Kind of like the pair of pants from Disney's Onward, you know, the pants that just walk around? It's kind of like that, except less sad. And as far as Batsuit designs go, this one is just messy. I mean, the spikes on the shoulders are just covering your blind spots, not to mention the added weight, the Mohawk helmet as well. I mean, I think it's gonna be a no from me in terms of design. But he's mastered sword fighting, okay? I'll give him that. He can sword fight, that's pretty cool. We all love swords. Number 7, Azrael. Better known as Jean-Paul Valley, he is a vigilante who resided in Gotham City. See, after Bane broke Batman's back, he took on the mantle in the Nightfall story arc. See, Jean-Paul was able to defeat Bane when he stepped up to the bat. Pun intended. And he replaced the Caped Crusader. But in doing so, he made more than a few changes to the suit. Technical changes, but also, of course, design. So the final product had him looking like a cross between Batman and like an Autobot. He has the blue and yellow metallic armor, which looks like a hot mess already. And on top of it, he even added other gadgets in, like he added claws, dual mag weapons, and of course, a cape that definitely does not work in terms of, you know, aviation. That's not gonna fly. That's literally not gonna fly. Sure, he made the Nightfall story arc interesting, but if we're looking at just suits here, this takes the cake easily on this list.
Number 6, eaten by birds. Miss Arrow has a pretty wild death in the comics. For those of you who are unfamiliar or haven't heard of her, that is probably because you know her by a different name. the Other. That is right, Miss Arrow is actually the extremely powerful spider totem entity that is linked to Peter Parker's Spider-Man. As such, she is entirely made up of spiders, despite sometimes appearing to be human while under the guise of Miss Arrow. Because of this, she was at one time killed by a bunch of birds who devoured the spiders that made her up, with Peter squishing the final spider that survived the bird attack. This wouldn't be the end of the Other though, as one more day messed up the whole continuity thanks to reality being warped, with Peter having actually never accepted the Other in this alternate, which is now the main, reality.
Number 5. Being dumb. Magneto in the Ultimate Universe was like the bad guy. He was nuts, and he had the power to back it up, which he proved when he used his abilities to offset the magnetic poles, which put the whole world into chaos. Tidal waves in New York, mega flash freezes in Latveria, volcanoes erupting in the Amazon, all that good stuff. Naturally, the survivors were not happy, and they would be coming after Magneto with a vengeance. They aren't dumb, so of course their attack on the villain would be planned out. Right? Well, it doesn't seem like it was. While all the surviving heroes make their assault on Magneto's fortress, the hot-headed Warren Worthington, you know, the guy whose only power is that he has wings, decides that he is going to jump the gun and come full speed blasting through a window, giving Magneto a good old punch to the face. Magneto could have squashed this guy like a bug in one swift move, but he doesn't even think Angel is worth the effort. Instead, he lets Sabretooth, his mad dog, do the deed. Sabretooth pounces on him, rips one of Warren's wings off with his mouth, and then stomps on the mutant's neck, taking him off the board in one page. Idiot.
And friends, before we move on to our next spot, if you love hearing about weird, dumb deaths, well, we have a lot of weird things for you on our weirdest playlist, so go check that out. It's full of weirdness. Number 4. Waking up Fin Fang Foom. Something you shouldn't ever do? Wake up a sleeping dragon, as Jerry Carpenter learned in Hulk vs. Fin Fang Foom issue number 1, which admittedly is a pretty wild and weird story, so if you're into that, you should go check it out. Here, as promised, the two beings end up fighting, but first, we're treated to a story clearly inspired by John Carpenter's The Thing. Probably also why this guy's named Jerry Carpenter. You see what's happening here? Except Fin Fang Foom is the shapeshifter in this tale. For those who don't know, Fin Fang Foom is actually an alien whose race is actually known for their shapeshifting abilities. I feel like not a lot of people think about that, but that is a thing. Needless to say, Jerry finds Foom below the ice and sends for the rest of his team up in the Arctic. They're basically like a research team, but instead of just waiting, he is hasty to proceed because he basically wants to name this newfound finding of what he believes is an undiscovered type of dinosaur after himself. He smashes through the ice with a pick, only to awaken Foom. Foom blasts forth and takes Carpenter for his host, basically wearing him like a skin suit. The really weird thing though is I think this is the only case of Foom like actually needing to do this. He claims he's attempting to rebuild his strength by merging with hosts and is like looking for a real strong host when he runs into the Hulk, but I don't think he's ever actually needed to do that before or after this point ever again. And he can just shapeshift on his own. He doesn't actually need a human host to turn into a human, so there's a lot of weird stuff happening in this comic. But hey, if you gotta make Hulk and Foom fight, I guess you gotta do some weird stuff. Number 3. Star Sapphire. When it comes to Star Sapphire, Carol Ferris, she isn't always a hero and she isn't always a villain either. She's kind of done both of those things. She served both roles, but either way, she usually does so pretty ridiculously dressed, I gotta be honest. I mean, not always. She's had some reasonable costume designs and some that I've liked, but for this point, I'm focusing on her one-piece bathing suit-like costume with the middle of it cut out to the point that it becomes theoretically, structurally unsound, I'd say. For the record, I don't mind a woman who shows off her body. In fact, you know, I too enjoy that, both as a woman and both as someone looking at women, especially when it comes from a place of empowerment. I don't really mind anyone showing off their body as long as they're the ones making that choice for themselves, and it makes sense. Truly, doing so can not only be a good showcase of confidence, but also of self-love and self-celebration, and that's hot to me. But this costume is just objectively ridiculous, because how does it stay on? I mean, I know that it's, you know, probably like a construct, likely created by Carol, so we can explain it away with what is basically like kind of cosmic magic. But imagine cosplaying this look. Imagine it. Just imagine you wearing this costume, and how does that work? Without added invisible straps or literal glue or tape, it becomes impossible. And for that reason, I have to call it dumb, because logically, in our world at least, where sadly there are no green or violet lanterns, it simply doesn't work as it appears. Also, I have only ever seen people successfully cosplay this look with invisible straps. Glue would likely damage your outfit, and honestly it's really hard on your skin, I know, because I've worn it under costumes before, and tape would probably sweat off unless it was really cold out. And I know because I'm not a super sweaty person, and I've also worn tape before and experienced that. Which, you know, if you have to wear it in the cold too, you'd be really cold in this look. So really the only option is invisible straps, which clearly Carol doesn't need somehow in the comics, as she's never drawn with them. Unless maybe she is, but they're invisible so we don't see them. Even invisible straps, you usually see them, so just makes no sense. Number 2, the Crossing Wasp. I don't just want to talk about the crossing here, folks, but as ridiculous as Thor's look is, Wasp is possibly even more wild. Now, she kinda had 2 looks as well. The one she wore at the beginning, which is kind of like a metallic bodysuit that somehow like fits her like spandex, and possibly even has a metal pocket on the legs. I'm not sure. I saw that in one of the panels I was looking at and I was like, wait a minute, does she have like metal cargo pants that are skin tight? It looks like a pocket to me. The second is after she is resurrected in Avengers issue 394 and comes back literally looking like a pink bug woman with bright pink hair and bright pink wings. Number 1, Original Peacemaker. I have to say, I really love how dumb this look is, and I love that we managed to somehow keep it in the DCU, almost 1 for 1. The reason why I went with the original version of Peacemaker's costume from his days at Charlton Comics isn't just because of the white pants, which to me are an absurd fashion choice to make when you know you're headed into a fray. Wearing white pants in general for me is like a huge thing. I'm a messy person in my day-to-day, so I can't imagine getting into a fight with white pants on. But the other thing that I really think is strange about this that really gets me is the weird giant helmet. It looks like there's like a thick doorway sitting on top of Peacemaker's head.
Number 10, Martian Manhunter and fire. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I am also not the biggest fan of fire either, and I would absolutely hate being set on fire for so many reasons. But for such a powerful hero who can shapeshift at a molecular level, change his entire genetic makeup to let him pass through solid objects, withstand ferocious attacks, or bend light waves around his body, it just seems a little silly, right? Not to mention that he comes from Mars, otherwise known as the Red Planet or the Fire Star. So why is this one of his biggest weaknesses? Well, long before Martian Manhunter even existed, a race of aliens known as the Burning caused some serious damage with fire in order to create their offspring, which, needless to say, people weren't too happy about. After the Guardians of the Universe separated the offspring into the White Martians and the Green Martians, they were all imbued with a congenital pyrophobia, aka a fear of fire. So it kind of makes sense why he's so afraid of it. Not only does it physically hurt him, but it also scrambles his most prized weapon of all, his mind. This fear and weakness is so intense that when he's exposed to flame, he has the capacity to self-destruct, either combusting into bits or dissolving into rivers of Martian liquid. Want to know more about the Martian Manhunter? Well then check him out in his first appearance in 1986's Justice League of America, number 255. Number 9, The Flash and Being Too Fast. At first, I've gotta say this one confused me so much because that's kind of the Flash's whole thing, right? Well, when it comes to Barry Allen, his speed might be his greatest strength, but being too fast puts his life in mortal danger. In Crisis on Infinite Earths, we see the Flash use his super speed to thwart the Anti-Monitor's evil plan, but the speed vortex he creates to stop the villain's antimatter cannon from firing is so fast that it sweeps the Flash away along with it. He ends up being stranded for 23 years in the Speed Force, you know, that mystical energy field that gives all the speedsters their powers, and spends that whole time running and trying to figure out how to get back. Basically, what happened is that Barry ran way too fast for his body to handle and he atomized himself. Thought to be dead by his closest friends, including Wally West, who took up the Flash mantle in his absence, Barry's apparent death was a huge shock for everyone, and also entirely his own fault. Check out more of The Flash for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1956's Showcase, number 4. Number 8, Power Girl and Raw Materials. You'd think that being weak to kryptonite would be their only weakness, considering how easy it seemed for people to get their hands on it. But Kara Zor-El from Earth 2 actually had another pretty big weakness at one point. They were vulnerable to unprocessed natural materials such as branches and rocks for a short while. This also includes stone, dirt, and sand. Basically anything that can be found on Earth that isn't man-made. In Peter David's Supergirl Volume 4 number 16, she gets knocked to the ground and impaled by a pretty big tree branch, which in her defense would put anyone on the ground. Supergirl helps yank out the branch, and with this weirdly sociopathic smile on her face, she asked, "What, are you vulnerable to wood?" It took a second, but after she was no longer in pain, she replied, "Worse, to any raw, unprocessed natural materials. So, sticks and stones really can break my bones." God, dumb joke and even dumber weakness. Check her out for yourself in her first appearance in 2011's Flashpoint Volume 2, number 5. Number 7, Adam Strange and Forced Deportation. Who knew that archaeologists could also be superheroes? Well, apparently Adam Strange did, because that is exactly what he is. He inadvertently found himself on the planet Ran and was gifted with all the powers of a superhero in Mystery in Space, and it's not exactly explained why. Sounds pretty great, right? I mean, what could possibly be his weakness? Well, it's not actually his fault or in his control. This life of bliss he lives on Ran is frequently interrupted by his rather inconvenient transportations back to Earth, where he has no powers at all. The technology responsible for bringing him to Ran, the Zeta Beam, only allows him to remain there for as long as it's transmitting back to Earth. And as it takes the beam a few good years to reach Strange's home planet, it's not exactly easy to catch a ride back. Strange might have been recruited as Ran's savior, but his timing issues really make this role more of a temporary gig. He could be midway through his heroics before vanishing without a single trace. He even left his wife to nearly get eaten by a tiger once. Luckily, as Alan Moore's Swamp Thing series clarified, the Ranians are more than capable of looking after themselves when Strange isn't around, and thank goodness for that, because I wouldn't be relying on Strange much either. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with 1986's Outsiders, number 6.
At number 6, we have Iron Man's nose from Iron Man number 68. There's change in the air. I can smell it. One of the most iconic examples of a redesign gone wrong, we have that period of time where Tony Stark thought it would be a good idea to include a nose in his mask to make him look more expressive and help strike fear into the heart of his enemies. Buddy, the only thing you're striking me with is an intense desire to laugh in your face, because let's face it, the addition of a big metal nose ain't exactly intimidating. Now you might be wondering why Marvel would even give him a nose in the first place. Well, the story goes that one day Stan Lee was complaining about one of the studio's new artists. See, Stan thought that Tony's eyes were too close to the surface of the helmet for there to be any room for a nose underneath the mask, and so Stan asked, where's his nose? The editors took this to mean that Iron Man should have a nose, and so they gave him one. That is, until Stan caught wind of the change a few issues later and demanded that the editors change it back. At number 5, we have Hawkeye's tunic in Avengers number 72. Good lord, dude! Pants! Not only is Hawkeye one of the bravest Avengers on account of him being super powerless, but to stand shoulder to shoulder with Earth's mightiest heroes in what's effectively a dress is a whole new level of courage. Not to mention that this was right after some very questionable decisions led to Hank Pym turning Hawkeye into the size-changing Goliath. Not to mention that this was right after some very questionable decisions that led to Hank Pym turning Hawkeye into the size-changing Goliath, who sports an equally decisive costume, that one including those redundant bolted shoulder and waist straps. Sorry to say, buddy, but this fit just makes you look arrogant. Arrogant? No? Okay, I tried. At number 4, we have Captain America's exoskeleton, debuting in Captain America number 438. On yet another edition of Why Does This Hero Need a Whole Suit of Armor, we have Captain America. And while his excuse is a little better than Superman's, it's still pretty lame. You see, Steve Rogers became completely paralyzed by an illness brought on by the very super soldier serum that granted him his superpowers in the first place. And so in order to allow Cap to continue his crime-fighting career, Tony Stark fashioned him this exoskeleton. And after getting some implants that would enable him to operate it, Cap was back in action. Now, I've included this one on the list because the whole concept is a bit ridiculous. I mean, super soldier serum induced paralysis just makes the serum itself completely redundant. Like, if you wanted to give Cap an Iron Man suit, just give Cap an Iron Man suit and do away with the whole degenerative disease nonsense. I mean, Spidey got an Iron Man suit, more than one, and he didn't need to get paralyzed to earn it. At number 3, we have Plaid Daredevil. Okay, this next one is seriously cruel, and if you laugh, your soul is going straight to Mephisto. This panel comes from What If Volume 2 number 17, the comic that asks, what if Daredevil had a dishonest tailor? To which Kingpin and Punisher are seen laughing in his face. See, I think this is dumb not because of the plaid, although it is pretty ugly, but because it's uncharacteristic. You see, Daredevil wouldn't have gotten ripped off. He can't. He can literally smell fear and dishonesty. It's what makes him such a good lawyer. So either this universe's Daredevil is missing one of his most crucial hypersenses, or he's Canadian. Either way, it's nothing to laugh about. At number 2, we have Hulk, the Horseman of War from Incredible Hulk number 456. That's right, not only has Hulk been a villain, an Avenger, a space gladiator, and the conqueror of entire planets, but now we can add first non-mutant war horseman of the apocalypse to his resume as well. His armor, made from celestial tech, allows him to accomplish feats of strength with ease, which the irregular Hulk would probably likely find at least a little strenuous, like picking up and tossing an entire Egyptian pyramid for instance. His helmet also has the added bonus of calming his inner demons, allowing the Hulk to become more cold and calculated. And if I'm being honest with you guys, the real reason I included this costume on the list is because it makes Hulk look like a jacked version of Marvin the Martian. Am I the only one who's made this connection? Can't be. And at number 1 we have Mangaverse's Black Panther, who made his very first in-costume appearance in Marvel Mangaverse Eternity Twilight. The Marvel Mangaverse has plenty of questionable redesigns. I'm looking at you, Spider Gloves. But when it comes to the King of Wakanda, boy oh boy did they do him dirty. See, instead of utilizing the vibranium of his homeland to build himself a super suit, T'Challa of Earth 2301 seems to have replaced his sacred herb powers with the spirit of Kwamatha, transforming him into a furry. As if things weren't furry enough with Tigra around, who, after watching T'Challa transform, immediately gets the heart-shaped eyes for him anime style. Okay, look, maybe I wouldn't have so much hate for the suit if there was a suit to begin with, as the king's suggestively shaped loincloth leaves very little to the imagination, and the bat ears. Ugh. Why is he the only anthropomorph with hyper-realistic ears? Now if you made it this far without gouging your own eyeballs out, then give this video some love. And hey, if there's a dumb costume you know of that I left out here, feel free to let me know down in the comments and I'll be sure to include your suggestion in the next iteration of this list.
Number 10. Shot by a diamond bullet. This is actually a pretty smart way to deal with Emma Frost, but all in all a pretty dumb way for her to die when you kind of read it on paper. Both like makes sense and doesn't make sense. I mean, Emma Frost has a diamond form, which makes her pretty much indestructible, for the most part anyways. So how does one defeat her when she's in her diamond form? Apparently by exposing the flaw in her diamond form and using the same material to kill her. How do you shatter a diamond? With another diamond, apparently. I don't know if that would actually work, but comic book science. Emma's diamond form is her secondary mutation, and while we've seen many attacks on her defended by this form of hers, apparently a diamond bullet can just insta-shatter her. I mean, I've heard of diamonds cutting diamonds, but never necessarily being used to completely shatter a diamond. If shot at her exact weak point though, apparently this is just what a diamond bullet can do, which is something one of the Cuckoos, Esme, knew about and exposed to kill Emma, mind-controlling mutant Angel Salvador to carry out the execution. Don't worry though, Jean, while merged with the Phoenix, managed to bring her back with Beast's help. Jean can do anything.
Number 9. Taken out by the Punisher. Some of the most creative forms of transportation to the afterlife come at the hands of Frank Castle, the Punisher. But at the end of the day, Frank is just one seriously messed up guy. A normal guy with a good chunk of training, a hell of an arsenal, and a little bit of creativity. He is not a match for a lot of the incredibly powerful beings out in Marvel Comics, but somehow we have the Punisher kills the Marvel Universe story. When his family were taken out by being bystanders of a superhero conflict, Frank is given the backing to take out all those who call themselves superheroes, and my god, a lot of these deaths make no sense, because of course they don't. He takes out the Hulk by waiting until he is Bruce Banner again, but that's never how the Hulk has worked in Marvel Comics. He took down Dr. Doom, with his only excuse for winning being that Doom stopped to give a speech, which does kind of make sense, but the worst example comes when he takes on the mutants. By the sheer will of lazy writing and Frank's throwaway explanation of manipulation, all the combined X-teams are having their final battle against Magneto, Apocalypse, and their unholy alliance of acolytes and evil mutants on the moon in an air-sealed dome, which is where Frank drops a nuke on them, taking them all out. Ignore the fact that a good chunk of those here would be able to survive that kind of attack, and we're all good.
Number 8. EMP versus Phoenix Force. This has to be one of the most ridiculous ones. The Phoenix is typically known as being an unstoppable, undefeatable entity. I mean, the first time around, the only way that it was able to be defeated was basically by self-sacrifice. However, that hasn't stopped people from somehow banishing it or straight up killing the entity. Case in point, when Magneto defeated Jean Grey as the Phoenix by administering a powerful electromagnetic pulse, which gave her a planetary-sized stroke. Literally, those are the direct words from the comic. That is some major comic stuff right there. Only in comics would that happen.
Number 7. Being a part of X-Statics. Lots Lots of deaths in X-Statix were stupid, but that was the point. The whole thing was a bit of a satire on reality TV. The team itself isn't exactly one of the premier mutant teams out in the world, and that's putting it lightly. The members of the team aren't exactly the most impressive. The original team made up of mutants Zeitgeist, who has the power of Super Puke, La Nuit, who has Dark Force powers, Battering Ram, who was a big purple goat-looking man, Plasm, who had liquidy water powers, Gin Genie, who could create earthquakes depending on how much she drank, and Sluck, who is basically a squid. They went by X-Force, which as you may know shares its name with a much more impressive team. But all those original members, minus 3 of them who I didn't mention, and Sluck, who was blown up by a tank in South Africa, all got completely decimated in spectacularly embarrassing fashion during a rescue mission to save a pop music boy band named Boys R Us. Turns out their demise was actually planned by the team's manager, coach, and its leader, Zeitgeist himself, because they thought a team with a constantly changing roster and high body count would gain them fan interest. The team managed to go on with pretty horrible results. There have been 28 members of X-Statix who have passed away over their history, with only 9 of them surviving. So yeah, don't ever join this team.
Number 6. Human Torch and Asbestos. Now don't get me wrong, Johnny Storm aka the Human Torch is a force to be reckoned with. Not only can he create, absorb, and manipulate fire, which is pretty awesome on its own, but his Nova Flame is hot enough to vaporize the particles of anything in his way, whether it's a bullet, a building, a bad guy, etc. Interestingly enough though, his powers can't seem to penetrate asbestos. Now this doesn't seem like much of a weakness now, given that asbestos is now banned across most of the world, but back when the Human Torch was first created by Stan Lee and Ernest Hart in 1963, it was a much more common thing, as it was used to insulate pipes and wires, soundproof rooms, and even make cheap garden furniture. In Strange Tales number 111, Asbestos Man came into play, dialed up Johnny Storm, and arranged a showdown between the two. The Human Torch wasn't really all that into it, but he agreed nonetheless and showed up completely underprepared. Asbestos Man used his super asbestos suit, a fire retardant shield, and a fisherman's net to go toe to toe with the Human Torch, and he wreaked havoc on the Human Torch until he developed mesothelioma and needed an oxygen tank to stay alive. Moral of the story, kids, is always prepare for anything, and please, don't breathe asbestos. Check out more of the Human Torch's story starting with 1961's Fantastic Four, number 1. Number 5. Wonder Woman and being tied up. Superheroes don't come much more kick than Wonder Woman. She's an extremely skilled warrior with enough power to take on the gods and win, and she's shown time and time again that she can hold her own in the world of comic book heroes. However, the Golden Age Wonder Woman was bound by an interesting Amazonian rule that really did not work in her favor. Known as Aphrodite's Law, it states that when an Amazon girl permits a man to chain her bracelets of submission together, she becomes weak as other women in a man-ruled world. This gender-specific weakness lasted from Wonder Woman's debut in 1942 right through to the mid-80s, when DC finally retconned this out for good. This weakness is less literal than metaphorical, meant to demonstrate Marston's argument that women are only vulnerable to men when they choose to be. But still, I am very glad that this was gotten rid of for good. Check out Wonder Woman more for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 1942's All-Star Comics, Volume 1, Number 8. Number 4. Gladiator and Self-Confidence. Cal-Arc, aka Gladiator, is arguably one of the most powerful comic book heroes ever, gifted with planet-shattering strength, super speed, heat vision, frost breath, and a few psionic abilities as well. He's a superhero anyone would love to be. However, even though he is loved, he never really learned to love himself, and that is sometimes his biggest downfall. Although low self-esteem isn't exactly fun for anyone, trust me, I know, for Gladiator it's actually a fatal weakness. His power fluctuates according to his confidence, as seen in Dan Abnett's and Andy Lanning's War of Kings crossover in 2009. Get him to doubt himself or even his abilities for 1 second and he can be defeated by opponents with far weaker abilities than him. A prime example of this is shown in War of Kings number 3 when Rocket Raccoon manages to convince Gladiator his gun will hurt himself and despite withstanding far worse in the past, succumbs to self-fulfilling prophecy and is beaten. Give his story a read for yourself starting with 1977's X-Men number 107.
Number 3. Fat Man the Human Flying Saucer. Once upon a time, there was a pretty ordinary, wealthy man by the name of Van Crawford. Van was an expert on all things hobbies, and he owned a string of hobby shops. Well, Van here just happened to be waltzing along when he spied, in his little eye, an alien flying saucer crashing into the Earth. Now being such a nice guy, Van decided to clear the space for the saucer to land, even pushing over a tree to do so. Very nice. Crawford came face to face race with an alien, and it turns out that this alien was the flying saucer he had seen. This race of aliens seems to be able to transform from their normal form into a flying saucer, which is honestly a pretty spectacular ability to have. Luckily for Van though, after the alien gave him a drink that seemed to look and taste like a chocolate milkshake, he also gained this awesome and unique ability to transform himself into a human flying saucer. It's honestly really fun and kind of super charming that I really enjoy it, and I think we can all agree that it's kind of dumb still though. Number 2, Spider-Ham. Hailing from a universe where all the Marvel characters are replaced with cartoon character animal versions of themselves, Peter Porker is Spider-Ham, a pig. Peter Porker was actually born a spider named Peter, and he lived in the basement lab of May Porker, a scientist who had created the world's first atomic-powered hairdryer. May Porker, using the atomic hairdryer, accidentally irradiated herself, and then she bit Peter the spider, which made him turn into an anthropomorphic pig just like her, only with the relative powers of a spider. In his premiere issue, he would go on to do battle with Hulk Bunny, created when Bruce Bunny was trapped in an arcade cabinet and bombarded with gamma radiation. I wish I was making this all up, I really do, but it's also kind of awesome. Spider-Ham has most of the same abilities as 616 Spider-Man, only he has the rather unique ability called Spider Nonsense, which basically allows him to be more and more cartoony the more danger he is in, which is the perfect reason to have the wackiest nonsense happen that will save his piggy hide in some of the most imaginative ways possible. In at number 1, the Red Bee. The Red Bee from DC Comics comes from a time in comic books and the superhero genre when superheroes were really just pulp vigilantes who had some kind of really minor edge over the criminals they would be thwarting. Rick Raleigh was the assistant to the district attorney, and with this look at the criminal justice system, he grew tired of seeing criminals escape justice either through technicalities or because the court system was just too slow. Growing fed up, Rick decided he would create a costumed identity to bring criminals to justice. But as a normal, pretty intelligent guy with a flawless moral compass and a decent right hook, he didn't really have an edge over those he was facing. Enter Michael. Michael was a trained bee, like the insect that Rick would keep in his belt buckle. Rick was a unique kind of bee though. As we know, bees don't survive for too long after they sting someone. Luckily though, Michael had the advantage of being able to sting multiple times. Michael, coupled with Rick's fists and other equipment, would be the bane of villains everywhere, and thus the Red Bee was born.
Number 10, Typeface. What a strange one. Typeface was a fairly short-lived villain from Spider-Man comics. He made his first appearance in Peter Parker Spider-Man issue number 23. Initially, Typeface was villain Gordon Thomas. After suffering much misfortune in his life and being laid off from the only job that gave him solace, creating signs, he decided to become a villain, aiming to get retribution. He took a grease pencil and wrote a bunch of letters on his face, that big R on his forehead for retribution, and he also donned a bunch of letters, wearing them on his clothes and sometimes kind of like a necklace of sorts. This was his look. Now, he didn't really have any powers, just a passion for fonts and letters, although he was military trained, so at least he had that. His time as a criminal was quite short, as he was pretty quickly inspired by Spider-Man actually, and a memory of his brother, to seek redemption instead of retribution. But even his time as a hero also was not really that long, probably in part due to how ridiculous his outfit and his gimmick was as Typeface. He literally fought people by throwing letters at one point, so that's kind of where we're at. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, don't miss out on any of our content by clicking that subscribe button, and make sure you have that bell. Hit that bell so you can get all the notifications when we have new content for you. Number 9, Kite Man. I love Kite Man, but no matter what suit I see him in, pretty much all of them are ridiculous because, well, I mean, he's so ridiculous. Kite Man has to be one of the highlights of the Harley Quinn animated series. Although I'm a bit behind right now, to be honest, he has been one of the greatest characters that stand out to me from that show, and honestly, I love how much dimension they give Kite Man. Like, this show made me such a Kite Man fan, and even though, yeah, I think his suit is dumb, that doesn't mean that I don't love Kite Man. When it comes to his suit, of course, it is pretty dumb because, I mean, well, he wears a kite on his back. That's pretty ridiculous. Which he uses, or attempts to use, to commit crimes. But that doesn't mean I love him any less. In fact, I probably love him even more because of how dumb his look and his gimmick are. Hell yeah! Number 8. Original Kang the Conqueror. Even though I do love Kang, and also I personally do love his look, even I cannot deny that he looks absolutely ridiculous. From the helmet to the tunic down to the metallic adornments on his outfit here. This look is definitely one that seems to have emerged from a time storm, but I wouldn't necessarily guess from the future myself. Although something that you do have to admire and admit about it is that it is iconic, it's striking, and it stands out. The original Kang look was created by Jack Kirby, who truly is a legendary artist, and despite the fact that, you know, this look now feels dated, the fact remains that this costume has pretty much remained the same throughout the character's long history, which I think is a testament to, you know, how striking and iconic it is. When it comes to his standard look, you know, this is pretty much it. So yes, it might seem ridiculous, but it certainly is memorable, and despite being silly, is still very clearly loved by a lot of us. Even in the MCU, they pretty much left this look as is. They just kind of like texturized it, I think, a little bit, and other than that, I mean, it looks great in the MCU, even though objectively ridiculous. Number 7. New 52 Riddler. I love the Riddler as a villain, but not all of his looks have been smash hits. Included in the lot that are not so great is his redesign from the New 52. We first see him, I believe, as an inmate in Arkham Asylum there. He wears a bandana with 2 holes cut out as, you know, places for his eyes to go, the usual Arkham inmate suit, and of course sports that famous, but honestly very terrible, green question mark mohawk, but trimmed all the way down. It's definitely a look, but it's not a look that I'm really a fan of for Riddler, I will tell you that. I like New 52 Riddler the best when he's in a suit decorated with question marks. Even the Jim Carrey version of this character in question mark bespeckled spandex is way preferred to me over this look. Fortunately, as New 52 would go on, this design would evolve and change. Thank goodness. New 52 was an interesting time for a lot of people in redesigns.
In at 6, the Justice League of Antarctica. The Injustice League was a group of bumbling villains who found themselves unintentionally regarded as heroes. Initially formed by Major Disaster as a counter-strike force against the newly internationalized Justice League, they clashed briefly with the JLI but were swiftly defeated. Following their defeat, the Injustice League disbanded, with each member going their separate ways. Through a stroke of luck though, the media mistakenly portrayed them as champions of justice, applauding their supposed reformation. This unexpected turn of events fueled Major Disaster's ambitions, leading him to appeal to Maxwell Lord, the liaison of the Justice League International. Recognizing the potential value in monitoring these comically inept individuals, Lord extended an invitation for them to join the Justice League Antarctica branch, with the primary aim of giving the somewhat dim-witted Nort a purpose. Lord then appointed him as the leader of the team. Under Nort's guidance, the Injustice League embarked on their new role in Antarctica, providing an opportunity for Lord and the Justice League to keep a watchful eye on these unlikely group of characters. But you know what? At least they'll save Happy Feet. Penguins are in Antarctica, right? Or is it that they aren't in Antarctica? I have no idea. Halfway through, and at number 5, Grandpa. Not even joking. Limited information is available about the Global Reaction Agency for Mysterious Paranormal Activity, aka Grandpa, which was just a great acronym, guys. Good job. The organization operates with a small number of field agents stationed worldwide, dedicated to the noble task of saving the world from paranormal stuff. While Grandpa is recognized by governments around the globe, it may not always command the respect it deserves. In one instance, a member of the Japanese self-defense forces considered 2 Grandpa agents to be a more dangerous threat than Terminus himself. In the aftermath of the secret invasion, Grandpa sought the assistance of the mighty Avengers, led by Henry Pym, to address international crises, but in doing so, the agency granted the team immunity from prosecution by Hammer, thereby enabling them to act freely in the face of global emergencies, like paranormal ones, you know, like the Paranormal Activity movies? Yeah, they're all over that. In at 4, Super Buddies. The Super Buddies, a reassembled team of former Justice League International members who were brought together by Maxwell Lord as his robot companion Elron, are just interesting at best. The roster consists of Blue Beetle, Booster Gold, Fire, the Elongated Man, his wife Sue, and Captain Atom. Although they once fought side by side, the Super Buddies struggled to find harmony within their ranks. Blue Beetle and Booster Gold, formerly known as the comedic duo Abbott and Costello of the JLI, now engaged in constant arguments, each futilely attempting to prove their own maturity. Unfortunately, their efforts go largely unnoticed because Booster Gold and Ralph Dibny face a lack of credibility among their peers, a fact that no one hesitates to point out. Fire, on the other hand, runs a website called blazingfire.com where she offers paid downloads of images of herself. It's basically the site that shall not be named, but for a superhero. It's a whole thing, okay? Then adding to the mix, Fire convinces Sue that Ralph is below her level of attractiveness, causing Ralph to develop self-conscious behavior when the dude can literally shape himself into whoever he wants. So I don't understand that. He can literally just give himself a couple extra inches in height and he'd be fine. But you know what? It's a thing. The fact that all of this is happening is just so dumb. I respect it though. And at 3, Chess Set. The Chess Set organization made a sinister attempt to auction off the remains of Auric and Silver, former members of Gamma Flight, along with the body of a civilian scientist. These individuals had undergone experiments by the Sphinx and his agents in their pursuit of superhuman abilities, and the scientist, who claimed to have gained powers from these corpses, had stolen them and put them up for auction under the Chess Set organization. Alpha Flight, the successor to Gamma Flight, along with the assistance of Spider-Man, tracked down the location of the auction, and at the event, the enigmatic Brass Bishop revealed that the energies from the Sphinx's experiments had become infused with the bodies of the siblings and the scientists. They ended up forming like one massive entity during a fight, but then the new entity, formed by Vengeance, sought to eliminate the Chess Set and take revenge. However, Guardian, the leader of Alpha Flight, appealed to that being's sense of honor and persuaded it that killing Chess Set would not honor memories. But you know what? These guys are heroes for making money in this world, okay? They're lifting themselves up by their bootstraps, and I respect it. But ultimately, in number 2, Bizarro League. Okay, I get that it's Bizarro, but since it is Bizarro, they are the opposite of what they are, and since you're trying to see them as villains, that means that they're heroes, okay? When Bizarro 3 inadvertently absorbed radiation from a blue sun, he gained the ability to duplicate himself and create other Bizarro life forms resembling individuals from Earth. Utilizing this ability, he populated a cuboid planet in the blue star solar system known as Bizarro World. These replicas, among other numerous duplicates, he created like a Bizarro version of the Justice League. However, the inhabitants of Bizarro World eventually grew disoriented with Bizarro 3's rule, leading a rebellion against him. In this moment, Bizarro 3's friends from the Justice League intervened to assist him, encased within their own hyperbolic chamber headquarters. It's all Bizarro versions. There's Bizarro Superman, Bizarro Flash. There's even a Bizarro Doomsday that they're fighting. It's a whole thing. They're still kind of heroes, and I respect them. Kind of. And finally, in number 1, Alpha Fight. Alpha Fight is basically just Canada's version of the Avengers. It's the foremost team of superheroes. Established and operated by the Canadian government through Department H, whatever that is. They were formed because of the Superpowers Registration Act in Parliament, which mandated the employment of all superpowered individuals, including mutants, by the government. It's meant to just be the freaking Avengers, but Canadian. I find that offensive. We should have something better. Like the Mounties. Yeah, that's right.
Kicking off the list today at number 10 is Valkyrie from the Ultimate Comics. Valkyrie is an incredibly capable warrior and is probably one of the strongest members of the Ultimates, but she wasn't always that way. Initially, Barbara Norris was just a 19-year-old girl with no actual powers who was obsessed with superheroes, specifically Thor. She did have some novice level martial arts skills though, and she used those as a member of the Ultimate Universe's Defenders, who were really just wannabe superheroes. They went off pretending to be superheroes for clout, essentially, until Loki gave them all real powers. She then eventually joined the Ultimates, but all the while she was claiming to be an incredibly capable warrior, she was suited up to go tanning, basically. Valkyrie initially was pretty scantily clad for most of her appearances. Later on, after working with the Ultimates for a bit longer and having some real training with real Asgardians, she would begin to armor up to bring her more in keeping with someone who is actually engaging in armed combat on the daily. But for a good chunk of time, she was jumping into battle extremely unprepared unprepared. Maybe coming back from the afterlife taught her armor was kind of useful, but I think the change in her costume could actually also kind of show her character's growth in a weird kind of way.
And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, and if you love when we talk about ridiculous suits that people wear, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 9. Death's Head. Death's Head is a character more prominently featured in Marvel UK, who honestly looks like he just stepped out of Reboot to me. Or rather, Reboot's Megabyte looks like he may have taken a page out of Death's Head's book when it comes to his look, I should say, since Reboot actually came out after Death's Head first appeared and was created over at Marvel Comics UK. And while I do think Death's Head's look is very extreme and exaggerated, which is why he is going to make my cut here, I will say it does kind of make sense when you learn that he first made his appearance in Transformers issue 113. I mean, he does kind of have that extreme Transformers look. But Death's Head himself is not actually a Transformer. He's a robotic bounty hunter actually, although he prefers being called like basically a peacekeeper. But you know, bounty hunter, peacekeeper, I guess those terms are interchangeable. But while you might be wondering if he can even make the cut as a hero, yeah, he pretty much does. He's basically like a bounty hunter with a moral code, sorry, a peacekeeping person with a moral code. So walking the line of being a hero, I'd say. Although I'm kind of now wondering if he fits the suit criteria, as his suit is really his body, but I'm gonna count it because, you know, many robots, they don't really wear suits, so it's weird to think about, but you know, many robots are kind of just walking around like kinda naked.
Number 8. Armored Daredevil. Matt Murdock has been through a lot of redesigns. As one of the most popular Marvel heroes, that does make sense. His first initial change from yellow to fully red stuck through basically until the modern day, but in between then and now, Marvel still flirted with several other ideas. After getting a pretty brutal beatdown at the hands of the Wild Pack, Daredevil decided that maybe a little armor would be a good choice. He faked his own passing as Matt and then designed himself a new red and black suit with prominent silver plating on his shoulders, knees, and up the sides of his legs for extra protection. Now, if I'm honest, I think this suit that first appeared in Daredevil number 321 in 1993 actually looks pretty cool. Maybe I'm weird, but something about it just feels like yes. I will admit, for a character who's pretty dependent on stealth though, it may not make the most sense, and it was rather flashy, but he still used it for a decent chunk of time, and I'm sure the extra protection came in handy a few times when he used it to fight villains like Hellspawn. Thank God he went back to just the red though. That's the classic, and I like that.
Number 7. Professor X and his Shi'ar exosuit. Professor X's Shi'ar exosuit, oh my. So this is one I personally find to be kind of silly, more because of my own headcanon to be honest, so go with me here. I don't know why this manifested for me, but when I was looking back on that fight against Magneto where Wolverine gets the adamantium ripped from his bones and Professor X as a result shuts down Magneto's brain basically, I saw this suit and I couldn't stop seeing it, and it lives still in my memory and in my heart every time I think of Professor X, really. And maybe because it's a 90s comic look, maybe because of how bulky it kinda looks to me, I don't know, but I just imagined it as being like a slow moving clunky suit that like allows Charles to walk but also doesn't save much time. Like he's walking like this, like he's like I don't know why I imagine that, but that's what I do. Also, the idea of Charles possibly wearing something made of metal to go up against Magneto in a fight, I thought that was pretty ridiculous. Although apparently this suit is like somehow like telepathically fueled, which I don't know, must be a Shi'ar thing. However, this never came up in the fight, the fact that his suit is maybe made of metal. I still don't really know for sure what this exosuit is made out of. At the end of the day, Charles technically won against Magnus, so maybe he knew something I don't know about this suit. Or maybe it's like metal, but like, I don't know, it's protected from certain abilities because it's made by the Shi'ar. It looks like metal. I don't know. Number 6. Marvel Now High Evolutionary. Everyone right now wants to talk about how great the High Evolutionary is, and I get it. In Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, he was a horrific villain, and Chukwudi Iwuji nailed the role completely. He really made for a good and true classic villain, but let's take a look at the High Evolutionary in the comics. What is he like? Well, he's about as ridiculous looking as the harebrained science schemes he ends up involved in. I can tell you that much. Well, pretty much every look he's had looks completely weird to me. I think one of the most strange, for me personally, is the one he wore during the 2012 Marvel Now event. Here he donned his normal metal suit, but with more added studs. Number 5. Calendar Man's Calendar Cape. I mean, you have to give him some points for super committing, but the Calendar Man cape is pretty objectively ridiculous, I would say. This costume at least also came with somewhat of an improved gimmick with more deadly weapons at his disposal as well. I believe the first appearance of the Calendar Cape was in issue 312 of Batman. Instead of him being a magician who is secretly a criminal, fond of riddles and various antics tied to days of the week, holidays, and even seasons, this time around Calendar Man was more fixated on the days of the week and the gods that they were named after, theming many of his crimes around them. Although, to be honest, if I were going to cosplay as Calendar Man, I would definitely wear a calendar cape. Number 4. Shocker. I mean, Shocker is just all around pretty ridiculous in the comics, I think. I think we can all agree on that, and his costume is no exception. Shocker basically looks like he took a sofa, gutted it, and turned it into his costume, which perhaps makes sense when you consider his abilities. He typically attempts to shock Spider-Man, so perhaps being insulated helps him to protect himself against his own shock-inducing weapons? I don't know. Still, you can't deny that even if there is some kind of practical use for this look, that he doesn't look absolutely ridiculous in it, because he definitely does. And honestly, I'm not really even sure if there's a practical use for this suit. I'm just trying to help make it make sense. I want it to make sense, but I don't know if there is a reason for why he wears it. Number 3. Batman the Animated Series Condiment King. Condiment King is one of my all-time favorite villains because he simply is so ridiculous. What can I say? I'm a sucker for ridiculous dumb characters, especially villains. But him also being a villain armed to the teeth with condiments also means he's gonna look pretty ridiculous as he roams the town, squirting people with ketchup and mustard. That being said, his look in the animated series still takes the cake for one of the dumbest of all of his looks. Of course, this was done on purpose. You can tell pretty much everyone that has designed a Condiment King look is, in on the joke. What I really love about this ridiculous look is the fact that he's literally wearing white underwear over his suit, which is just hilarious. Such a play on ridiculous costumes in general. Costumes that we think look great, but are still kind of ridiculous. Also white underwear when you're firing condiments. Dangerous. Number 2. First MODOK. The very first appearance of MODOK was in Tales of Suspense issue number 94. This design is another created by Jack Kirby, which throughout the years has mainly remained unchanged. Sure, there have been different MODOKs and some alternate looks offered to us, but the main MODOK look has pretty much remained about the same. A suit that contains a giant head with little limbs fully sheathed in purple metal, and all seemingly floating and contained by a hover chair, which MODOK uses to get around. The implication here is that his little legs can no longer support the weight of his massive head and brain. The look is ridiculous, sure, but it really does help MODOK to stand out. And it's also this dumb look that has kind of helped to inform his character over the years, which also I love. While he often yearns to be as terrifying as the words that his name stands for implies, he also is just super ridiculous. Number 1. Codpiece's Codpiece. Codpiece, of course, is none other than a Doom Patrol villain because, well, I mean, look at this guy. His whole thing is weapons. A very specific weapon located in a very specific place. It's a big red gun that he wears on a harness, acting as a weaponized, codpiece. Why this costume? Why this gimmick? That's a good question. Because when he was in high school, he once asked a girl out and she turned him down for being quote unquote too small. Now, she didn't mean what he thought she did, she meant simply that he was too short. Misinterpreting this and seeking to prove himself, he became the criminal known as Codpiece. In the comics, I believe he was a one-and-done villain. I feel like I'd be nervous wearing a costume like this because if someone shot back at your weapon, the location of it might result in you being damaged in some pretty sensitive parts. So definitely makes sense that he was a one-and-done villain though. I mean, I feel like, what else are you gonna do with this guy?